Now we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show for today's 220-1002 Core 2 A Plus study group. We've got questions and answers in this first hour where I will try to untangle my headset, where I will ask you questions from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you will try to answer them online using the magic of internet technology. We will then open up the phone lines in the second hour and see what's what. Hello, chat room. Good morning. Hello, everybody. We got a few more minutes left in the morning, don't we? At least here on the East Coast. Those of you in Europe have already more than halfway through your day. Your day's almost over. Oh, boy. Let's see if I can get all of this put together here. I think we're doing pretty well. All right. I believe I have corrected my flickering video problem from Tuesday. We will see. These things sometimes take multiple steps to go through to finish all of that. Good morning, Rye. I guess it's Rhode Island, right? Did I get my abbreviations right? Or is that Montana? Never get those right. There is plenty to go through today. I don't even remember what the questions were. I wrote these questions a week ago. So I'm trying to remember what the questions were. So it's new for all of us. That's fun, isn't it? I'm going to say it's fun. We're going to see if it really is. Time-wise, we're good. Okay, recordings are going here. Recordings are going down here. You can see my Cylons down here. They're doing well. And we are recording on the YouTube. So 3 recordings, that seems to be the right amount. There always seems to be a problem when there's 2. There never seems to be a problem when there's 3. So I'm assuming that's really the secret sauce. The secret number is 3. I think I should probably do the same thing with the backups that I have. Let's see, I have backups of data. I have backups on the cloud. So real-time cloud backups, that's 1. I have the copy that's local on my storage drive, that's 2. And I have a separate backup that I do to a NAS, that's 3. So there's my magic 3. I don't have any, well, I guess the ones in the cloud are technically off-site. But not everything on my system is backed up to the cloud. These are the challenges we always have in making sure we have good backups. I do have other systems with similar things on them, so that's the way it works. Hello, South Carolina and Sweden and Houston and Rhode Island. Rhode Island's actually, isn't it like a long name? It's not just Rhode Island. It's like the Republic of Rhode Island plantation thing, isn't it? I'm trying to remember. Do I back anything to tape? Does anybody back anything up to tape anymore? I do not back up to tape. Because tape's just so slow. I have plenty of storage in my NAS to back up what is on this machine? 2 terabytes SSD? Let's see. This is an old iMac. Storage is, it doesn't say. Let's go to the system report and see what it says. It says storage is indeed on this machine 4 terabytes. 4 terabytes of SSD. That's what I got. What I got shooting around inside of there. So that's good. 3.5 terabytes, it says. It's not technically 4. I have a 4 terabyte. I have 2 4 terabyte SSDs up here that are doing the recording. So actually, I'm recording 2 terabyte SSDs right there. Aren't I? Yes, I am. But so there's plenty of space on my storage system on my NAS to back up everything that's here. Providence Plantation. See, I got it right there. I was in the right place. I was trying to remember my American history, which I do not do a very good job with. Hello, Nebraska and UK and Washington. Thanks for being here. Australia's checking in. Isn't it like 2 a.m? Thank you for being here, Sarah. Let's see if you make it. We'll try to keep you up, keep you going. Berkshire, Massachusetts, welcome. Good to have you here. 5-minute warning. Let's see if we can get some of these things going. Ireland is here. St. Vincent is here. Oh, there's a lot going on here. Hey, Canada. Thanks for being here. As I've mentioned, I have family in Canada. So I always like it when Canada checks in. Nice to know Hamilton is still there. Hamilton and Vancouver. We have family on both coasts of Canada. I guess not technically both coasts. Wouldn't really the coast be further off to the east? Can you really call Hamilton East Coast? I guess you can. I mean, Eastern time zone, right? Sort of Eastern. I realize there's much more to the east there. We've got, there's Delray. I was just in Delray about a week ago. It's fantastic. Nice weather. Normal Florida afternoon thunderstorms. Good stuff. Virginia Beach, welcome. Fort Bliss, thank you for being here. We got a few minutes before we get started. 4 minutes until we get going. I should probably do one last check. Presentations are ready. Q&A is ready. All the other stuff I didn't make a coffee. Oh, that was a mistake. That was a critical mistake. That's okay. I really had too much coffee this morning anyway. Is there enough here for me to? Yeah, there's plenty here for me to wet my whistle. And this is normally what I keep here, is this ginormous mug just full of some type of water or something. Don't usually have that in the live stream. So now the whole thing is different. Now everything is different on the live stream because now we're drinking whatever's in here. I think it's tea. I believe that's what I have in there. Iced tea, because I'm in the South, Southern United States. And that's what's in there. And I think it just makes more. I think it just continues to have tea in it, which is good. Hello, Baltimore. Welcome. Philly, Chandler, Arizona. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We've got a lot of good questions today. Hello, LA, Los Angeles, California. So nice to have everybody here. We're going to do plenty of Core 2 Q&A today. So this will be fun. I always like going through the live streams and doing this. How are you able to answer live questions? We'll answer that in just a moment. We'll talk all about how you can connect in and do all of that. So do not worry. I will tell. This is not the live stream. This is the boring part. Then the live stream, you'll see me like right there. So it's not one of those situations where, is this it? Do we just look at the back of his head the whole time? I do get those emails. I was going to watch your live stream, but it was just you talking with the back of your head. This is the pre-show. I start things up about 10 minutes early. I realize some people would like to just jump right into it. But I just like to start 10 minutes early and say hi to the chat room and say hello to the folks in Guatemala and Houston and Miami and Los Angeles and everybody else who's hanging out. And just to talk and answer questions and do other things as well. You know, it's a live stream. We can make this happen. So today we're going to play Call of Duty. And no, it's the CompTIA live stream. We're doing actual work from here. I should start a Twitch channel just to see if someone would bother showing up. It's the Twitch channel of the person who can't play games very well. And we'll see how well I do. I really should put the Xbox in and do that one. What happened to the support button? I don't know. What did happen to the support button? I don't know. Was there a support button? Did Super Chat go away? I don't think Super Chat went away. I didn't take Super Chat off. So Super Chat I thought was still there, but I could be wrong. I guess I should look. Let's go to professorbuster.com/live. Let's see if maybe it got turned off for some reason. Yeah, I don't see a Super Chat button. It's just not there. What happened? It's missing. That's interesting. Now I want to find out why. Why did that happen? Well, won't find out this time. We'll have to find out later because it's now top of the hour. Make that happen. There is a thanks button on every single video, or there should be, unless they took that away from me too. I don't know. But that's there as well. So you can, of course, do that. Is there a... No, I don't want to insert an ad. I don't want to highlight video. It's top of the hour anyway. Let's see if this works. Let's go to, why is that so bright? That's not what I wanted. I want to go to Keynote, bring the brightness down. And we're looking for a green light. We get a green light, we can actually do a live stream. There we go. Very nice. And I think with that, everybody, oh, there it is. Brandon with a $5 donation with the super chat. That is so kind of you. Thank you. I'm so glad it's there. I don't know why it's not there for me, but I'm glad it's there for you, and I appreciate that. $5 donation. Every little bit helps keep the lights on, so we really appreciate it. And with that, let's get started, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2021 Professor Messer Core 2 A+ study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions from the 220-1002 A+ exam objectives, and you can answer interactively online if you're here live. If not, you can still follow along, and there's plenty of things to do, even if you're watching this on the replay. In some ways, it's even better. You can skip over some things. Not that I would recommend doing that, but I know the way that I watch YouTube videos, and I appreciate everybody being here live. I think it's kind of fun to have this available. And there, if you would like to participate live, and why wouldn't you? You need to open up a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. There is the link. And if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you on the screen. There's also an app that you can get if you are into using an app for this. The app is the Socrative Student app. Make sure you have the right one. There is a Socrative Teacher app. You don't want that one. You want the Socrative Student app. And that app will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. That will get you into the room where there will be a question waiting for you when you get into that room. That question is what we call our rewind question, because it is a question that we did last month. And it is one already, as I've started in the chat room, knows I was talking about the flickering of my video, and it's flickering again just as we get started. I obviously need to be in a live stream for this to happen. Let's do this rewind question that I have from last month and see how much you remember, see if you're able to get in and answer the question. The question asks, a user gains access to a wireless network using a PIN, P-I-N. Which of the following would describe this authentication method? Would it be 802.1x, PSK, WPS, DHCP, or WPA2? A user gains access to a wireless network using a PIN, P-I-N, PIN. Which of the following would describe this authentication method? Is it 802.1x, PSK, WPS, DHCP, or WPA2? We will come back to this question in just a moment. Lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA to lock in that question's answer. And we will come back to that in just a moment. Thanks for being here. We've got so much going on here. For those of you that are already subscribed to our YouTube channel, you know there are tens of videos being released onto our YouTube channel in the last couple of days for Network Plus. So those are some interesting new content because there is a brand new Network Plus exam. There is also daily pop quiz questions available on Twitter. You go to professormesser.com/Twitter or on Instagram, professormesser.com/Instagram, whichever one you like, whichever one you'd like to follow us on. The questions will be there and waiting for you. There's also of course, on YouTube, as I mentioned, videos coming out for Network Plus, but there's a lot going on there. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube and subscribe to those. Today, we're going to be talking about questions, though, that come from the 220-1002 Core 2 A+ exam. This is an exam that was released on January the 15th of 2019, which means the earliest possible retirement you would probably see this is July of 2022. This means if you are studying for these exams right now, keep studying. You will finish these exams and be certified, have that certification in your pocket well before July. So keep doing what you are doing. You've got plenty of time to study, plenty of time to get through this. And I suspect that retirement date might even actually get pushed a bit. I don't know that for sure. That's my estimation based on what has gone on with the Security Plus and Network Plus. which just means you got plenty more there. So lots going on for all of those pieces. There is, of course, for the 221,002, a single exam you would take to pass that. You would need to get a 700 score on a scale between 100 and 900. So there is, of course, differences in the scoring between the 1001 and 1002. You have to make a little bit more points on that one. So make sure you are familiar with that. For these, the important part and what we'll talk about today are the 4 domains from the 221,002, which are operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. All of the questions that we do today will come from those 4 domains. So if you're familiar with those, you're going to do just fine. And already I even mentioned in the chat room, we've had a couple of folks take advantage of this. And the latest, Scott Wolf, thank you in the chat room, $10 donation on the super chat. There is also a chat on each video, not a chat, but a super thanks on every video on the Professor Messer YouTube channel. So if you're watching a video and you think, this was a great video, here's $1, here's $2. It's another great way to help support and keep things going on the site. This is also another way to help support the site. It's our Success Bundle. Of course, as you know, every single one of my training videos is available for you to watch for free online. You can go to YouTube. You can go to my website. There's no registration. There's nothing behind a paywall. There's nothing I hold back. Everything is out there. So you don't have to do very much to get the information you need to pass this exam. There is, of course, people who would like a downloadable version. They would like MP3 versions. They would like some additional study materials like my course notes and practice exams and access to priority Q&A, which we will talk about as soon as we get into the after show today. There's some priority Q&A questions that I go through first, where you don't even have to call in. Just send me your question. I'll answer it online. This is all available on my website. It's my Success Bundle. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/1002Success for more information. There is also free Q&A on my site for the 1002 exam. It's my Take 10 Challenge. There are questions there for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. You can find all of those free questions available in the online Q&A form at ProfessorMesser.com/take10. So don't forget about those. If you are watching this video live, then one of the things that I always make sure you're aware of is that there is a video replay available on my website or on YouTube immediately afterwards. Some people like to have an audio version of this available so they can listen in their car. You can find that at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. And my marketing manager, Lori, goes through all of these videos and puts into the YouTube video description a set of timestamps that allows you to find exactly what you're looking for. And you can go back to any of our live streams over the last number of years and be able to see what those timestamps are. Lori's watching the replay of this. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She is going to go through and put this in. Usually takes about a day. We'll get them online for you so you can find exactly what you're looking for. I also want to let you know that there is, of course, a 24/7 chat. When we're not here live, we're hanging out in the chat. So head over to my Discord server, ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. We'd love to have you join us there. Ask questions. If you have something you'd like to ask of me, you can always send me a direct message or leave a message in any of those public rooms. More than happy to answer those questions. If you are planning to take your 221,001 or 221,002 exams, you could, of course, go to the Pearson VUE website and simply purchase that exam sitting from that website. But you're paying full price. There's no discount on the Pearson VUE website. If you would like a discount without having to hunt around for some discount code or coupon code, then you should go over to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers and purchase your vouchers from the Professor Messer website. This not only gets you a discounted voucher, so you're not paying full price, but you also get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook for free. This is something you can't buy. You can only get it with my Success Bundle or by purchasing a voucher. And you can buy a voucher for any of your CompTIA exams. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers for more information. And I do not, those are standard vouchers. They're not retake vouchers. So I don't have retake vouchers, so to speak. It is simply buy a voucher, use that to take the exam. Obviously, for A+, you will need 2 vouchers because there are 2 exams that you would need to take. And I do have a bundle package there too. So something can help you, ProfessorMesser.com vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was a user gains access to a wireless network using a PIN, PIN. Which of the following would describe this authentication method? Would that be 802.1x, PSK, WPS, DHCP, or WPA2? If we look at our results, you can see that 59% of you say that's WPS. But almost a quarter of you, 22%, said that's WPA2. 15% said PSK. And then 4% said 802.1x. And 0% said DHCP. I have a feeling we all know what DHCP is, so we understand why that would not be the right answer. In this particular case, we're putting in a personal identification number. And that personal identification number is a process you would use if you were using Wi-Fi Protected Setup, or WPS. This used to be called Wi-Fi Simple Config. That was the idea. They were trying to make it easier for people to be able to connect to a wireless network. One of the problems, though, is it's really not that easy. And in fact, by making it easy, in some ways, they made your network less secure, because using that personal identification number ended up being a bit of a problem. I have more information about that in my video on securing a SOHO network on the 221.002 2.10. There's a number of different ways to try to make this easier. I think we all really finally realized we'll just put in a pre-shared key for everybody. And that's the easiest way to do it. Pre-shared keys tend to solve the problem. WPS is the one that has the personal identification number as part of it. And indeed, that is answer C. 61% of you chose WPS. That is the right answer. WPA2 is obviously the encryption technology that we would use on a wireless network, but that WPA2 does not require you to use a personal identification number. There's usually a number of different authentication methods associated with WPA2, but the PIN is something that is unique to WPS. There's also PSK. The pre-shared key is what we refer, that is when people say, what's the passcode to the wireless network? Oh, it's Ninja One. That's your pre-shared key. It's a key that you created that you can now give to everyone, and they can connect to the wireless network. Not very secure, but if you're in a coffee shop or somewhere where security for the authentication process is not the critical piece, then handing out a code for the wireless network is just fine. And 802.1x is network access control. That is a technology that would integrate your email and your username and password to the wireless network based on some other directory. You can use Radius, TACACS, LDAP, Active Directory, or almost anything else. 802.1x, only 3% of you chose that one. That obviously would not be the right answer. And the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DHCP, is what you would use to get an IP address automatically. Obviously, nobody bit on that one. 0% for that. So that is our rewind question of the month. Hopefully that got you into the mode of answering questions. You're now able to connect to the online system to be able to answer the questions. And now we can do all new questions in the study group. So everything from this point forward is something you've never seen before. To answer a couple of questions in the chat room first, a question was about, can I buy a voucher from you and have it valid to take your exam from home in Sweden? Unfortunately, you cannot. So you can only use vouchers on my site if you are in the United States, Canada, or a number of United States territories, unfortunately. So sorry about that. I wish I had vouchers for the world, but it doesn't quite work that way from the CompTIA perspective. You would need to purchase vouchers from a CompTIA provider in your territory, in your country, to be able to do that. And I guess there's lots of reasons they do that, but there you go. So now let's do a different kind of question. So some of you are aware when you sit down to take your A+ exam, the first handful of questions you get on the exam are not multiple choice. The one we just did was a multiple choice question where there was a question and there were multiple choices to choose from. But the first set that are there are not multiple choice based questions. So if you are ever in a situation where you are sitting down for the exam and suddenly you realize, wow, there's a lot of questions here that I was not ready for, those questions are performance-based questions. That's what CompTIA calls them. So I have written for you a performance-based question. This one is more of a fill-in-the-blank question, and I want you to be able to use this. Here is your question of the month, your performance-based question of the month, which asks, a Windows computer has unexpectedly turned off during a power outage. What utility should be used to verify the file system? And in fact, if you add additional information into the answer, giving me specific flags, I'll give you some bonus points. They're all fake points, right? So I'll give you a million bonus points if you put the flags in. Maybe half a point if you put the flags in, because it doesn't matter. The points don't matter, as they say. Windows computer is unexpectedly turned off during a power outage. What utility should be used to verify the file system? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will see if we happen to know what this one is. This one is, I'm especially interested in this question. I live in Florida. It is the summer, the end of the summer anyway. We get a lot of storms. We have a lot of power outages. Just last night, there was a power outage at my house. While we were sleeping, power went out, power went back on. And you know that because you wake up and you look at a piece of electronics that is connected to the power of the house and the clock doesn't work. Because why would we ever put a battery into these devices in Florida to be able to do that? So that's one of those where I think you would need to know how to make this happen. This is a pretty good question, and I think we have about, interestingly enough, about 50% of you are getting this right. About 50% of you are not getting this right. In fact, you're thinking right, but not quite the right answer. I'm watching these as they come up on the screen. So we're going, which is good because now once we get to the answers, I'll explain why half of you are right and half of you may not be. We'll go through the details of that. I'll break this out into all of the little pieces. So this is one where the question's very important, the problem is very important, and the question is very important as well. We have to understand why we are having to do this. And in fact, the question's pretty clear on that. A Windows computer has unexpectedly turned off during a power outage. So already we have a pretty good idea of what happened with this computer. We were doing fine, and then suddenly it was not there. Suddenly no power. So now what do we do? It says specifically not what do we do, but the question asks what utility should be used to verify the file system. So that's a very specific request. We want to be able, we could do a lot of things here. We might be worried about a lot of aspects of the system. When the power unexpectedly turns off, we could have some type of hardware problem. Maybe there would be a certain set of tasks we would perform to check the hardware of the system. Maybe we're worried about the basic operating system functioning properly. There would be a whole set of things, troubleshooting tasks we would do to be able to check that. But for this one, we want to verify the file system. And that's a very specific thing that we want to do. We want to verify the file system. So in this case, here, let's look at the answers for this one. We want to perform what is known as the check disk function. So this is one that performs an analysis of the file system. The file system, of course, contains all of our files, but it also contains an index of where all these files are located. Whenever your system needs to access these files, it goes to the index and says, I'm looking for this file. Where would it be located on this enormous storage device? And your file system says, oh, it's located on aisle number 7. Go down 4 racks, and it's in there. That's where the file is. That's where you would find it. The interesting part about that is sometimes that index can be jumbled up. In fact, on your file system, there are redundant indices on your system so that if one does get corrupted, there's another one there that you can reference. But sometimes there is a difference of opinion on these indices, and we would need to be able to perform a check, a logical file system check, to be able to understand, are my file system indices and file system files, is everything working the way we would expect? How can we perform a validation of the file system? We need to check checkdisk. That's what performs a validation of the file system. If you perform a checkdisk/F, that's for fix. It fixes the logical file system errors on the disk. This means it goes through the index, and if any part of the index is not quite right, it fixes the index so it points properly to the file that you were looking for. That is probably the one you will use the most. It's something that can check your system relatively quickly. It might take a number of minutes, but after that's done, your system is validated. It looks a little bit like this on mine. Probably would do this on yours too. If you have an antivirus or something else running, it locks the volume so that checkdisk can't check everything. So it will tell you, I'll do this check next time you reboot. So it will come up and work properly. We'll look at that in just a moment. If you're more concerned about the storage device itself, that the physical device itself, you're worried, I might have a bad sector. There might be a problem where I write data to part of that storage device and I'm not able to read it properly. So there'll be a problem associated with that. One of the things you can run is a checkdisk/R, which goes through every sector of the storage device to make sure that the data is correct and that you're able to read and write from it properly. That could take a very long time to run, especially if you have a very large storage system. So this is one that you would probably only want to run if you really are concerned about the integrity of the storage device itself, because this could take 30 minutes. It could take hours, depending on the speed of the storage system and how large it is. It also, when it does this checkdisk/R, it also performs a /F. It checks the logical file system first, and then it checks the physical storage drive itself. And as I mentioned, it will run this during startup. If we were to reboot our system after seeing this message during startup, it would bring up a message that said, okay, let's scan and possibly repair what's on this drive, and it will give you a percentage complete for that particular drive. Now, as I mentioned, about 50% of you got that one right. About 50% of you did not get that one right, because a large number of people said it's not checkdisk, it's actually SFC, the System File Checker. The System File Checker is great for checking system files, to check and make sure that the operating system, the core operating system files in Windows are there. They're working properly. They are not corrupted. They have not been replaced by malware. There's nothing unusual about them. They are the same files that we wrote to the file system when we initially installed the operating system. Well, that doesn't check our file system. It checks the files themselves, and really just a subset of the files of our system, only those core files you would need to get running. So those of you that said SFC, you were thinking the right process, that we were checking files on our system. That wasn't the question. We wanted to know how we would check the entire file system, especially for an outage, a power outage. Normally, we would not be modifying system files while we were working on our computer, so power outage probably is not going to affect your operating system files. And it's certainly not going, SFC will not allow you or not provide you with a way to check the file system itself. No logical checks of the file system. So SFC, although close, we would only run SFC if we were worried about the very critical Windows system files, and perhaps we're worried that a third-party application may have modified those. This was a power outage, so this is not something where you would probably start with SFC, especially if the question is talking specifically about the file system. You would run checkdisk. So those are the two differences between those, and make sure you are familiar with those. That is our performance-based question of the month. Let's shift gears now and do a multiple choice-based question. This multiple choice-based question asks, let me scroll up a bit on my side, a share on a Windows computer ends with a $sign. Which of the following would best describe the share? Would it be files in the share are encrypted, the files are locked, an application required to use the files is not installed, the share name is hidden, or file permissions are inherited. A share on a Windows computer ends with a $sign. Which of the following would best describe this share? Is it that the files in the share are encrypted, the files are locked, an application required to use the files is not installed, the share name is hidden, or file permissions are inherited? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. That's the link that's on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure out what the answer to this one happens to be. If you've used this function in Windows, then you're probably already familiar with this. But if you've never seen this, you may be wondering, what does that describe? What does that $sign mean? What are we using there? Hopefully, this is something you're familiar with already. I'm trying to fit everything on my screen here. Figure out all this. There we go. We can see it a little bit better now. This is one where, especially on your exam, some of these tips, the tricks to use with the file system are especially important, because you will probably see Windows computers with shares that end in a $sign when you start working in a corporate environment. So what do those mean? And then what do you do with them? And is that important? Well, these are all good questions. Hopefully questions that you're already familiar with. So hopefully that's familiar with your understanding of the Windows file system. We'll see in just a moment. I'm not watching the answers. We're all going to see this together, so I'm not sure exactly what you're answering on this one. I like it to be a surprise for all of us. Sometimes I would occasionally sneak in and have a look and see what's there. We will figure it out as we go through this. Christian in the chat room, take your test Saturday. It's coming up. Time for going through all of those exam objectives. Check them off. They make a great checklist. That's my number one recommendation as you're going through these. Let's see how you did with this question. A share on a Windows computer ends with a $sign. Which of the following would best describe this share? Is it files in the share are encrypted, the files are locked, an application required to use the files is not installed, the share name is hidden, or file permissions are inherited? And we can see that 67% of you say the share name is hidden. We also have 17% that said files in the share are encrypted. So it's a pretty good number, 17%. And then single digits, a two-way tie for third between an application required to use the files is not installed and file permissions are inherited, 6% apiece on that one. And then 3% of you said that the files are locked. This becomes important, especially if you're using shared files on your system. Administrative shares very commonly have a $sign at the end of the share. This is where you would absolutely find share names that you just won't see if you type in NetView, or you are looking at a set of available shares in your Windows Explorer. You're not your File Explorer. You will not see these shares listed. You would have to go in and manually look at these shares on that system to see any of these shares that have this hidden function. Adding that $sign hides the particular share name. So on a system, for example, some common system files and folders are C $, admin $, print $. They're just invisible to anyone that's there. The shares exist. You can connect to that device and connect to a share called admin, connect to a share called C, really C $, admin $, connect to a share called print $. They're still there. But because these are not shares that normally users would need to access, you can hide them from the users even seeing them pop up into these predefined lists, which makes it easier for people who are trying to use this system and access the actual shares on this system. So if you are trying to access a public share drive, a marketing drive, a drive with all the presentations, a drive with documents, a drive with PDFs, and use those shares, you're not going to have a bunch of clutter in there from the C $, the admin $, things that only administrators would need to access. So I think that's a great thing to know for the exam, especially since it is in the exam objectives. But it's also a great thing to know if you're an administrator of a Windows system and you want to be sure that your users are able to access these things the way that makes sense for them. This is an important consideration, that just putting the $ on doesn't make the share any more or less secure. Anyone can really find these shares if they know what they're doing. But this just makes it easier to administer and easier for your users to be able to use these functions. So $, incredibly useful thing for the shares. You might want to even try it on your own system. If you answered the share name is hidden, answer D. That is the right answer. 69% of you got that one right. 17% said files in the share are encrypted. A $, doesn't mean that anything is encrypted. We're not really encrypting anything by putting a $, there. So that would not be the right answer. There's a completely different configuration where we would turn on encryption for that system, either whole disk encryption, FDE, full disk encryption, as they sometimes say, using BitLocker. That's the built-in full disk encryption for Windows. Or we might want to use EFS, the encrypting file system, where you can individually choose files and folders that you would like to encrypt. But using a $ doesn't do that for you. You have to go in the properties of the file or the properties of the folder and enable your EFS in there, or turn BitLocker on for the entire drive. There are also application required to use the files is not installed. Nope, that does not. There's no designation for that. The only way you know that the application required to use the files is not installed is you double-clicked on the file and it didn't launch. It gave you an error telling you that there was no application. The $ doesn't do that for you. And file permissions are inherited. Well, guess what? File permissions are inherited anyway, unless you have specifically changed them to something else, and the $ does not designate that. So that is not the correct answer either. Lastly, the files are locked. There is a way in the administration of that system to see what files might be locked. This is especially important if you're doing something like a file system and you are backing up a system where you can't back up locked files. You can on Windows to some degree. Some applications cannot back up locked files. So seeing those locked files is important, but the $ doesn't show that to you. That's not what it's for. That $ is to hide the share name. It's an administrative function. If you answer D, the share name is hidden. You got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another question. Here's another one that asks, what malware removal process should be followed after quarantining the system and before remediation? Is it educate the end user, schedule scans, disable system restore, update antivirus signatures, or identify the symptoms? What malware removal process should be followed after quarantining the system and before remediation? Is it educate the end user, schedule scans, disable system restore, update antivirus signatures, or identify the symptoms? You think you know the answer? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what those are. I think I've got, there we are. It's up on the screen, ProfessorMesser.com/QA. We'll get you to that answer. I'm wondering if I could stop the flickering. I have a feeling I won't be able to, but we're going to try, as they say, unplugging and plugging in again. Have you turned it off and back on again? So we're going to try that on this system, which is what I just did. I have a feeling my problem's on the other side, that I can't reach from here. It's behind the camera. So I think that may just be something I have to deal with for now. I will track it down. We'll do more troubleshooting once this is done. I should do a video on me troubleshooting a live stream. Can I do a live stream of me troubleshooting a live stream? I guess I could. I'm not sure that actually would work, though. Maybe some other time to be able to have that there. This is a pretty good question because you do need to know the steps for removing malware from your system, and there's a specific set of steps to be able to do this. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, what malware removal process should be followed after quarantining the system and before remediation? Is it educate the end user, schedule scans, disable system restore, update antivirus signatures, or identify the symptoms? And we can see that 59% of you have said disable system restore. We have 14% tied for second between update antivirus signatures and identify the symptoms. 8% said schedule scans, and 4% said educate the end user. So we've certainly got a lot going on there. We've already quarantined the system. Now we need to do something before we start removing the malware. So the thing that you would do is what 59% of you said to do: disable system restore. That's what you would do. This is an important part because I love system restore function. I use it all the time. This is something that will take your system and rewind the configuration back in time to a previous config. Really useful to have. And you would think if you got infected with malware, we'll just rewind our system back to a previous time and we've gotten rid of the malware. See how easy that was? Doesn't work that way. Because the malware itself knows that you will do that. It has already gone into your restore points and infected the restore points. So when you rewind back to a previous restore point, you're actually rewinding into yet another infected system. What's really bad is imagine cleaning this system, you go away, the user runs into a problem, rewinds using system restore, and ends up reinfecting themselves. That's not what you want either. So if you disable system restore, it deletes all of the restore points. So that's the important part of this. Yes, Microsoft uses two terms for this. They use system protection and they use system restore. So you will see those used almost interchangeably if you're ever in that particular situation. So make sure those are deleted before you do anything else. Make sure all of those are there. You can see it even says restore settings, system protection, turn on system protection, disable system protection. It's all right there. This system restore function is a useful one, and normally you would leave this on and allow users to take advantage of it. But whenever malware is involved, make sure that you're able to remove that. And that's why answer C, disable system restore, 61% of you got that one absolutely correct. Now, you would not update antivirus signatures, at least not yet, because the antivirus signatures are part of the remediation process. They're part of the process for removing that malware that's on that system. And so you would not do that before remediation because updating your antivirus signatures is part of the remediation process. You would also not be identifying symptoms at that point. Ostensibly, you've quarantined the system. So you must have found something weird going on with this system or you would not have quarantined it. You have already identified the symptoms. After identifying those symptoms, you quarantined it. Now what do you do? So that's another one you have to know. There's also 8% of you that said schedule scans, which is useful, but we're not quite there yet. Let's get rid of the malware first. Once we know the malware is gone, we can schedule your system to scan itself either in real time or at certain times of the day. And lastly, and probably lastly in your steps for removing malware, you educate the end user. Now that you fix the system, you have made sure it's doing its own scans. You've turned the system restores process back on because everything's clean now, and you've turned the system back over to the user. It's time to have a conversation with the user to say, here's how we think this malware got onto your system. And it's one of those where sometimes the malware is able to get on a system without the user doing anything. Those are rare and unusual these days, but they do happen. Usually, though, a user clicked on something. They clicked on something inside their email. They clicked on a link they shouldn't have clicked on. And it's good to at least talk to somebody and say, we think this is how it got on your system. Don't do that again, or else we have to go through this whole process all over again. Now, in reality, in most environments, this is a nuke and pave scenario. This is, oh, you've got malware in your system? Well, we know you're not storing your documents on the system because corporately, we tell you not to do that. We've administratively set it up so you can't. All your files, all your important files are already on a server out there. But now we need to take this entire system, delete everything, and re-image it. That's a process that doesn't take very long, relatively speaking, because hopefully your environment, your corporation, your enterprise already has this predefined. So you can walk up to a user, nuke their system, pave a brand new version of Windows on top of it. It could take really just a matter of minutes for that to happen. User reboots, and now they're back up and running again, no malware. So unless there's something specific that you're trying to recover on that system, I don't usually recommend people going through a malware removal process. That would be an unusual thing. I say the malware removal process is you delete everything and then you put on either a known good image or known good backup. And that's the way that you really remove malware from a system with 100% guarantees that it's not going to come back. Hopefully you chose answer C, disable system restore. That was the correct answer. Well, this is one where, as you've noticed, there are questions on this exam that are from many, many different areas. A lot of different domains, covers security, operating systems, administrative tools, troubleshooting. There's so much inside of this. One of the things I found, though, is a lot of the Q&A that you will find on the internet, and actually some of the Q&A that you might purchase, doesn't actually apply to the exam objectives, or the questions themselves were not written in a style that is similar to what you would find on the exam, or the questions are just not a high quality set of questions. So I thought there needs to be a better way to do this. So I created a set of practice exams. In fact, I have them right here. Let's go through a question from my practice exam book. This question at the top, A15, a user in the accounting department has recently installed a new app on their Android tablet. The app was not downloaded from the Central App Store, but instead was downloaded directly from a website as an APK file. Which of the following would describe this installation process? Is that cloud service, sideloading, biometrics, or encrypted? And you can either go to page 33 for the quick answer or simply click on quick answer if you have the PDF, or go to page 51, which is the details, or click on the details, and it takes you to page 51, just like that, where it gives you the question and shows you that the answer is B, sideloading, and I explained to you why that is the correct answer. Now, one of the things that I have found is that I don't always get the right answer. I always get the answer wrong, but the materials that I'm using don't explain to me why I got the answer wrong. So in my practice exam book, every single incorrect answer has an explanation of why the answer is incorrect. Now, it took 4 times as much time to be able to put this into the book, but I really feel that even if you get the question right, there's still information you can learn by looking at the incorrect answers. So all of this can be really, really useful to be able to not only understand the question that's being asked, but maybe understand the questions that aren't being asked, which might still show up on your exam. So that's an important part of this as well. And also, if you scroll down a bit, I have more information here as a QR code, or you can click on it and it will take you to the video on my website for securing mobile devices, because that's where this question comes from, the 221002 Objective 2.8. And if you're finished with that question, I click the back button in my PDF reader and I go right back to where I started and I keep going down to the next question. So even though it's in a PDF format, which I really felt was important because I wanted everyone to have access to this information, I didn't want it specific to a particular operating system or a particular mobile device type. I wanted something that everyone would be able to use on all of their systems, but I also wanted to make it easy to use, and hopefully some of those interactive links can help you. You'll find out more about that at professormesser.com/corepe. You can get digital versions of the book or physical versions of the book. This is the physical version. It's big, 380 pages. Of course, the QR codes and everything exactly the same as what you would find in the PDF. If you get the physical version, I give you the digital version for free as well. So that's another thing that might help you out. As you are trying to study for this exam, you're looking for some high quality questions. I think you found them in the Professor Messer Core 2 A+ practice exams. They're on my website, professormesser.com/core2pe. Let's do some more questions. Got another one here. Here's a very simple question. It asks, which of the following would be the best example of PHI? Is it physician visit records? Is it mobile phone call logs? Is it credit card numbers? Is it a hard drive image? Or is it a browser history? Which of the following would be the best example of PHI? Would it be physician visit records, mobile phone call logs, credit card numbers, hard drive image, or browser history? All of that is on my website. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Might be there. In the chat room, somebody said, how about a Core 1 practice exams? Yeah, those are there as well. I have a separate book for Core 1 practice exams. 3 practice exams are in here. This is the Core 2 book. The Core 1 book is exactly the same for this, except it's bigger. Different questions, obviously, but an entirely different 3 complete practice exams are in the Core 1 book as well. And the Security Plus, hopefully there'll be a Network Plus one soon. It's all about physics. It's all a physics problem for me right now. It's always time and effort. What is it? Time and motion. It's a time motion study. That's what it is. It's one of the things that are always my biggest challenge, is just making sure there's not enough time to do this, because I write every single one of these questions in these books. This is not farmed out to somebody. I think the best way to get the highest quality is to do it yourself. So that's why that's really important to me. It just takes a little bit longer to do. And I think that's just the way it is. It's just going to take longer to be able to have that. So yeah, this is the practice exams book. If you want the physical, send me a note, open a ticket in your member login, and I will send you a coupon that will discount the physical version for what you've already paid for the digital. So you don't have to pay, you don't have to overpay for upgrading to the physical. You would only pay the difference for upgrading the physical, because it's a physical book. I have to print this, and it's not inexpensive printing things and shipping them to people. So there is a cost associated with that, to have that there. Can I buy the Exam Hacks book separately? Nope, it is not for sale. You can only get it with the Success Bundle or when purchasing a voucher. Might help. Let's see how we did with this question, though. The question asked, which of the following would be the best example of PHI? Is it physician visit records? Is it mobile phone call logs? Is it credit card numbers? Is it a hard drive image? Or is it browser history? Let's see how you answered. 74% of you say these are the records from a physician's visit. And then single digits for everything else. 9% said mobile phone call logs, 9% said credit card numbers, 6% said browser history, and 4% said a hard drive image. Well, first we have to know what a PHI is. PHI is protected health information. And now that we know that, now we know the answer, really. This one was more of a definitional answer, wasn't it? It's a one-step. I don't have a lot of one-step questions. But that was definitely a one-step question. Health information associated with a person is definitely protected health information, PHI. This is one where if you're trying to have data between doctors, there's a set of requirements. They have to send this data in a certain way. It has to be protected. The regulations in the United States for healthcare information, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, or HIPAA, not HIPPO. It's HIPAA, and it's not HIP at all. I don't know if you've ever been involved with HIPAA regulations in your organization. It is a behemoth. So all of this is important, and it's important from an IT perspective that you understand not only is this information important to keep private, it has to be kept private in a particular way. It has to have a whole set of regulations and controls associated with it. So you have to know what PHI is, and that is the right answer. PHI is physician visit records, or anything medically related you would put into the category of PHI. Phone logs, not PHI. That's not medical. Credit card numbers, not medical. That would be PCI DSS, would be more of credit card numbers. Payment card industry card system, the card security for those is pretty important. Hard drive images, there's a lot of different styles and types of hard drive images, but PHI is not one of them. And browser history, well, that's not PHI either. Only thing that would be PHI would be something related to medicine and your privacy associated with medicine. So physician visit records, absolutely what you would find. This information is from the 221002 exam, section 4.6 in my video titled Privacy, Licensing, and Policies, as it flickers at us there, as it taunts me, as it tells me I've not fixed the problem. And that's one where I do have to get to where I'm fixing this problem eventually. That'll be what I do right after we're done with this live stream today. We've got time for more questions, so let's fit one in. This question asks, which of these features can support multiple macOS desktops? Is it Time Machine, Finder, Gestures, iCloud, or Spaces? Which of these features can support multiple macOS desktops? Is it Time Machine, Finder, Gestures, iCloud, or Spaces? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, lock in your answer on that site. We'll see how you did. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. When is the Network Plus study group? It's next week. You can find out when the next live event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar or choose the calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website. No, there's plenty of sound. I assure you. You need to turn up your volume. I'm speaking as loudly as I can for that. I think the one challenge we have when working with Mac OS is that there are so many different utilities, and if you've never worked with Mac OS before, then you may not be familiar with all of these, and you do have to know a handful of these utilities for the A+ exam, for the Core 2 exam. So make sure you know your Mac OS, make sure you know your Linux, make sure you know all of that. I don't know. What about Security Plus? Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and I think it might help you. Never touched a Mac or an iPad, need to get your hands on one of those so that you'll be able to support those, because there are plenty out there in corporate America and your enterprises. Very, very important to be able to know as much as you can about every operating system. People will have a fight with you about what operating system is best. Go ahead and let them fight, but you don't care. If someone's using that operating system and you have to support it, it really doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. You have to support it. So you have to know as much as you can about those. And in fact, it will make you a better technician to be able to know as many different operating systems as possible. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of these features can support multiple macOS desktops? Is it Time Machine, Finder, Gestures, iCloud, or Spaces? How did you answer? 58% of you said Spaces. 16% said iCloud, and 17% said Time Machine, almost a tie. 7% said Gestures, and 3% said Finder. So being able to support multiple desktops in macOS can be really, really useful. And the way that you can do that is through a built-in function called Mission Control, which has inside of it a function called Spaces. This is where, if you're ever in a situation where you just have one screen, or you would like to have a set of virtual desktop set up that you could switch between depending on what task you're working on at any particular time, you can build out multiple desktops here at the top of the screen, and then you can put different applications into the different multiple desktops. If you are on a desktop, there are a set of keys that you could use, the buttons you can press, things that you could have available to be able to do this. So, for example, if you go to My Machine here and I hit my Spaces button, it brings up all of the things that I happen to be running right now. And then if I wanted to create multiple desktops inside of that, I would configure it with Spaces to have that there. The multiple desktops, the ability to do this, really can clear things out on the screen, so you can really work a lot better and have all of that there. That's a great function to have, and it's something that will work very, very quickly. If you were trying to find all, like me, I have 20 different windows that are on the screen, but I can't see them. 20 things are running. I can click that one button for Mission Control, spreads everything out. I can really find what I'm looking for and then drill right back down to it. Have that there. So that means that if you are one of those folks that answered Spaces, answer E, 59% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. We've got 16% said Time Machine. Time Machine is the backup function that is built into the operating system. Makes sense, doesn't it? The Time Machine allows you to go back in time, back to previous versions of a file, for example. It's integrated into the backup system that you're using. Beautiful front end, allows you to find what you need. It allows for versioning, so you can find different versions of a file, but that's used for backups. We have 15% of you that said iCloud. iCloud is the online cloud-based storage from Apple. It also backs up your system. You can store your mobile device files there as well. For example, my mobile phone, everything that's in my mobile phone is backed up into iCloud. If this phone was to break right now, if I was to lose it, something happened to this phone, I can go out, buy a new phone, log back into iCloud, everything downloads as if nothing happened. Beautiful setup. So very similar to the cloud systems available from Google and from Microsoft. We have also 7% of you said gestures. Gestures are what you would use with a touchpad that would allow you to do different things. You can use multiple fingers. We've seen this, for example, if you have a tablet, we've gotten accustomed to using our two fingers to zoom in and zoom out. Well, you can do with gestures, you can do that on a touchpad. You can zoom in and zoom out of the things that you have on your screen, which is kind of interesting. And finally, Finder. Finder is the file front end. Think of it as the Windows Explorer or the File Explorer that you would have in Windows. That's the File Explorer for Mac OS. It's called Finder. Allows you to find things. Aren't these names cute? So that is how all of these different utilities from Mac OS, those are all real things. Those names are all things that I use all the time on my Mac machine. So Spaces is the one we were looking for to support multiple Mac OS desktops as part of Mission Control. If you answered E, Spaces, 59% of you got that one absolutely right. And if you have not worked with Mac OS in a production environment, all that means is that you haven't done it yet, because you will. The last place I worked, I think half of the people there were running Mac OS. So half the users were on Mac OS, half the users were on Windows. This is one of those situations. I guess it depends on your corporate culture and what is allowed or not allowed in a particular environment. Some places don't like to have Mac OS in their system. It adds an additional set of management and of support concerns. But it is one of those things where everybody has at least one on their system. There's just one of those Mac people that will not give up their system. So it's one of those where you do have to know how to manage it, especially if the executives are running Mac OS. That is not a group of people you want to have angry as you're stumbling through the operating system. But if they get a Mac OS system, you can insist that you get one as well so you can support it. See how this works? You should really be doing this for yourself. That's how you can get your hands on Mac OS. There are also a number of cloud-based Mac OS systems. If you ever wanted to get into Mac OS, you want to try it out, there's probably a little bit of a cost associated with that, but there are some cloud-based systems for that as well. Let's do another question. We have time. Let's fit another one in. This next question asks, which of the following would be a common method of controlling traffic flows through a router? Would that be IPS, DLP, NTFS, EFS, or ACL? Which of the following would be a common method of controlling traffic flows through a router? Would it be IPS, DLP, NTFS, EFS, or ACL? Do you think you know the answer? Use that link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Can you download Mac OS and run it on a VM? You can if you are running Mac OS already, because the end user license agreement for Mac OS only allows virtual machines on Mac OS on Apple hardware. So you can't legally run Mac OS on anything but Apple hardware. And if you've already got Apple hardware, you probably don't need to download it and run it as a VM, unless you really, really wanted to, I guess. But that is one where you cannot download one for free and run it on a VM unless you're on Apple hardware to be able to do that. And I haven't done that on mine. I just haven't run Apple hardware. I haven't needed to run a separate Mac OS instance on my Apple hardware. So it's not something I'd use. In that case, I guess you would go to a third party running Mac OS. That'd be something you can use, I guess. There are a number of third-party cloud-based services that will provide you with the Mac OS desktop. I want to say, why do I think in my head that Amazon was doing this for a while, if they are not still doing it? Does AWS have in their virtual desktop service, I forget what they call it, their virtual desktop service. One of you who is in the chat room will certainly be Googling this for me. Don't they allow, or don't they have Mac OS as one of those options? I for some reason, I remember reading something on that. And maybe it wasn't AWS. Maybe it was one of these third-party Mac OS systems to be able to have that there. I know that they do Windows. I know they do Linux. But a cloud-based Mac would work just fine for this. So this question Definitely not about Mac OS. This question asked, which of the following would be a common method of controlling traffic flows through a router? Would it be IPS, DLP, NTFS, EFS, or ACL? It's got to be one of those, right? Let's see how you answered. You answered 54%, just barely a majority, said ACL. 25% said IPS. 9% said DLP, and 9% said NTFS. We have 3% that said EFS. I might have given that one away because we talked about EFS earlier in the study group. Now, if we go with the majority, 54% of you said ACL. ACL, of course, is that little thing in your ankle, isn't it? Not what it is? It is, but in this particular context, it's access control lists. ACLs, access control list. Now, access control list is a very broad term. It is a term that you can apply to the way that operating systems allow access to files. You can have ACLs as part of a firewall security rule base. But I think most people think of ACLs, or what some people have called ACLs, perhaps incorrectly. It just doesn't sound right. ACLs are very commonly associated with routers, probably because Cisco talks about ACLs in their configurations. And this is how you set up an ACL in a Cisco router, that people tend to associate them with routers. But in reality, ACL is a very broad term that can apply to operating systems, to routers, to anything that has a list where you would go through the list to provide access, an access control list. So that's why ACLs would be very commonly associated with a router, a switch, firewall, operating systems. Certainly fits this question that talks about controlling traffic through a router. But if you're doing this on a router, there's probably a very basic set of tuples you would use, something like a source IP, destination IP, TCP or UDP port numbers. There are some access control lists that have much more granular controls. Operating systems certainly have very granular ACLs. Firewalls absolutely today have very granular ACLs. But in routers, where routers are really just focused on that layer 3, layer 4, it's very common to use IP addresses and port numbers as the access control list. And obviously, the disposition of the data is either going to be that you are going to allow this data to pass through, or you're not going to allow this data to pass through. So that's why this ACL is an important thing. This can really control the data. Now, a number of you, 25%, said the answer was IPS, an intrusion prevention system. Intrusion prevention systems absolutely have access control lists and are allowing or denying traffic through that device. But an IPS is not a router. And in this question, we wanted to know what we would use to control traffic flows through a router. An IPS is generally either a standalone system or one that is built into a next-generation firewall. So that is not one of those scenarios. So it would not be an intrusion prevention system. In the similar vein, data loss prevention is something that is, again, a standalone system or often integrated into a next-generation firewall. Data loss prevention is not commonly integrated into a router, certainly would not be considered that way, so we would not use DLP to control traffic flows through a router as well. Intrusion prevention systems or DLPs are, these days, we don't tend to find them as individual or independent units. Very often they are integrated into next generation firewalls. I guess you could find some very high-end DLP appliances that are separate these days, but more and more they're being integrated in. It's really hard to find an IPS, though. Those intrusion prevention systems have been standalone. You don't find those anywhere these days. And it really probably wouldn't make sense to buy them as a separate system, seeing how they are integrated into next generation firewalls for similar cost. Why not get the whole firewall? NTFS is a file system. The NT, New Technology File System from Microsoft, that is not a way to control traffic flows through a router. Most routers have no idea what NTFS is or use any type of NTFS file system. And then you got EFS. The encrypting file system, we spoke about that earlier in being able to encrypt individual files or individual folders on a system, a Windows system specifically, using encrypting file system. That is not a way to control traffic flows through a router. The only option here is the ACL, the access control list. 55% of you answered E, access control list. That is absolutely the right answer. Well done. That's the way you do it, is with those. All of the questions that we went through today come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you do not have these objectives, you are doing yourself a disservice. Make sure you get your hands on these objectives. They are extensive. They are a great checklist and a fantastic way to make sure that you are ready to take this exam. Use this as your checklist and you're going to be just fine. If you know everything that's in these objectives, you will do just great on the exam. So they're a great sanity check for you as well. We do one of these study groups every month for the Core 1 and the Core 2 and Network Plus and Security Plus. This is the current schedule for October. So our next A+ study groups are October 12th and October 14th. Now, next week, we do Network Plus and Security Plus here in September. So there is 2 study groups next week, very similar to the 2 study groups we did this week. I'm kind of cramming everything into a couple of weeks here in September. The important part of this is that it wasn't like that a month ago. So these things tend to change depending on the chaos that surrounds me in my real life. So always check back with the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. I always keep that up to date. So anytime I make a change to the official schedule, that's where I make it first. So I get a call that says, you can't do that day. We've got this happening. And then I say, let me move things around. And I move things around and they show up on the professormesser.com/calendar link. So that's where you would go to make that happen. I think if you were ever trying to figure out when the next event is going to be, regardless of when you're watching this, just go to the calendar. It's all there. And you'll know exactly when the next live event is going to be. Now, we went through a lot of content today. And if you've ever been through any of my videos, they are chock full of information. All of my A+ videos have hours and hours and hours of content. And what I have done is I've taken all of that content and I put it into a set of course notes. So these are the PDF versions of these course notes. As always, there are printed versions of this available as well. There's the printed version of the course notes. Every important piece of an image, a table, a document, and all the text are in these course notes. So if you're somebody who would like to have everything in one place, they're a great way to be able to have everything in one document that you can take with you everywhere. This is also one where you can bundle it together with the practice exams you saw earlier and actually get and pay less money. There's a bundled price that includes a little bit of a discount. So that might help you as well. Those are the Professor Messer course notes. You'll find them at professormesser.com/1000 notes. Well, can you believe we went through an hour of Q&A? We've got more coming, though. Stick around for the after show. I've got some after show questions, and I will be opening up the phone lines and taking questions from the chat room. Don't forget about the practice exams and the vouchers on my site. That's how you can get your hands on that Exam Hacks ebook for free by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, we have our free daily pop quiz question on Twitter, on Instagram, and of course, all the videos. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, you should do that right now by going to professormesser.com/YouTube. And if you would be kind enough to click that like button, that's how we know that people at YouTube like us because you like us, and it all works together. Somehow the whole thing happens that way. If you've been watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then you can go follow these particular rules, this pathway that I've got set up, and you'll be able to receive an email from me for a CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click on the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address, and in the subject line, put the September Core 2 A+ study group. And in the line by itself in that message, put the super secret code word of the month, ACL. The super secret code word of the month is ACL. Put that in that message. You can also put anything else you would like in that message, and I will read through all of these, of course, to be able to have that there. This is also an easy way for you to earn CEUs, but I realize a number of you will be earning your CEU by taking the CertMaster CE. So I'm getting fewer and fewer people needing these CEUs, but I still like to provide them if you do need them. So have a look at that. There's plenty to go through. Thank you for being here in this first hour. Stick around for the after show, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Core 2 A+ Study Group. Now let's click a few buttons. Let's see if, hey, I'm back. Hi, everybody. It's time for the after show. If you will bear with me just a moment, I will flip over to the after show content to be able to see. Let's see if I can do all of this myself. You'll notice there's nobody else here but me. So there's a number of things I have to do. I have to change some graphics. We're going to change our graphic right now. Boom. We need to get our Skype going. We'll get the Skype ready to go. Here we go. Get those there. There's quite a bit. I do use a Synology for my NAS, and I love it. Love it. The Synology has just been solid. I've got a number of different Synology units that I've used through the years. I think I own 4 separate Synology, some for my, some are for home. I have the Synology surveillance system for cameras around my house. That's what I use for my surveillance system. It's fantastic. I have the Synology that I use here in the studio to be able to store all of my files. Whenever I shoot, I store it there. I don't use ZFS in my current NAS because it's a NAS I've had for over, have I had it for 10 years now? Probably. And so it wasn't an option in that particular version. So I don't. While we're doing that, I'm going to call into my own show here. Bear with me a moment while I press a few buttons and try to call in to my own show. It's going to make some beeping noises here. Thank you for calling. Well, you're welcome for me calling this thing. I type this in and I push # and the lady says,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I guess I can do that if I can remember. It's actually on my screen, so it's not too hard to remember. And if I type that in right, the lady says,
welcome, Professor Messer.
Well, thank you, nice lady. That means that I can welcome you to the study group. You are able, I'll take questions from the chat room as we are doing right now, but I will also take questions through the voice telephone. Yes, I will. There's a phone number. It's a toll-free number in the U.S. We have 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. We also have the ability to call in for free if you are outside of the continental U.S. You just need to use the Skype tool, the Skype call-in method, because it doesn't cost any Skype minutes because it's a toll-free number. But you have to put a +1 at the beginning. So put +1, 855-785-7545, and you can also call in that way as well. So you've got plenty of options for calling in, for putting things there. While we are waiting on those calls to come in, I see some folks calling in now. We do have some folks that have sent in questions that are part of our priority Q&A. If you're someone who owns our Success Bundle, then you get your questions answered first. And we have a question that has come in from Scott, who asked, I was curious about the different RAIDs. For example, when it says speed is priority, RAID 0 should be the answer, I guess. We'll talk about that. What are the top priorities for the other types of RAID? Well, we, of course, have different things that we can look at for the other type of RAID. RAID 0, as you mentioned, is striping, and we tend to think of that as high performance because you're only having to write half of the data. If you have 2 drives, you write half of the data to each drive, which, if you think about it, if I only have to write half the data, then it would only take half the amount of time. If you had 4 drives, then I could write a quarter of the data. If I had 8 drives, see where this is going, an eighth of the data across there. That's why we commonly refer to RAID 0 as high performance. Now, in practical terms, Is RAID 0 really worth the high performance? Usually no, especially in these days of SSDs. SSDs are really the high performance option. But if you had to choose a RAID that would theoretically be the fastest RAID you could, I guess you could choose RAID 0 for that. Sure, that makes sense. The problem, of course, with RAID 0 is if you lose one of those physical drives, you've just crashed the entire RAID. You've lost data. So you're out of business. Probably not what most people were trying to do when they set up their RAID, which is why you rarely see RAID 0 running in any type of practical terms. So definitely no redundancy there. If you want redundancy, you might want to use mirroring. So mirroring, if you had to choose priorities, this is going to be certainly redundant because you have an exact duplicate of all the data across both of those drives. Let's say one of those drives gets lost, one of these drives fails. You've got an exact duplicate right here. So RAID 1 is perfect for redundancy, but of course, this means you have to have twice as much storage space to be able to support this. So if you need 4 terabytes of storage and you're setting up RAID 1, you would need 8 terabytes of actual drive to be able to do that. So that can be costly. You have to buy additional drives. You have to have somewhere to put the drives. There's cost to be able to run the drives, and that may not be the right solution for you either. But that's why we have RAID 5. RAID 5 kind of a nice middle ground where I can put striping across all of these, just like RAID 0. So there is nice performance from RAID 5, but it adds on an additional bit of data called a parity, which means that we can lose a single physical drive here and we're still up and running because we have some extra safety data that we can use to recreate what was lost. Very nice to have that and a very nice function. And it actually comparably, from a performance perspective, very close to RAID 0. So I suspect this question that came in, which is back here, the question that was originally posed from Scott was, what are the top priorities for the other types of RAID? That's not how it works. I think I talked earlier about bad practice exam questions that are on the internet. I think Scott may have found a bad practice exam question that was trying to pigeonhole a particular priority to a particular RAID type, and then maybe even for every RAID type, what is the particular priority? It doesn't work that way. Every time you implement some type of system, there are advantages and disadvantages. So hopefully some of the things I just went through give you a perspective of advantages and disadvantages. RAID 0, great for speed. RAID 0, bad for redundancy. So you really do need to understand advantages and disadvantages as you go through that. And I think if Scott in the chat room is the same Scott, then I think you got a pretty good idea of that. But if you can really say advantages of this RAID is this and disadvantages of this RAID is this, I think you could probably answer those questions, even if they are badly posed. So don't think that, by the way, that the questions you get on your exam will be badly posed, because they won't be. It's just some of the practice questions you tend to run into tend to be not so great. And this may have been one of those, but it still sparked a lot of good comments, good information that we can talk about and think about with RAID 0, RAID 1, and RAID 5, because those are things you will absolutely need to know for implementing those systems. I think it's an important part of you being a technologist is knowing what to recommend and why. And this is one of the reasons that people say, and it's somewhat, you'll understand when I go through this. When people say, why do I need to memorize advantages and disadvantages of RAID? I can Google all of this. All of this is in Wikipedia. I can simply do that, and I don't need to memorize it. Well, that's true. The problem, though, is you're in a meeting. The CEO of the company is in the meeting with some executive vice presidents. They have said that we need to create a new backup infrastructure for our company because we've started on a new set of efforts. There's a new set of projects and products that will be released. How can we create the perfect storage facility for this new set of projects? Well, there's a lot of questions I need to ask. Tell me about the data that will be stored. Who needs to access it? How many people need to access the data? What happens if the data is unavailable? How much money do we have to build out this particular storage. Now, all of these questions you're asking are so that you can put together the perfect solution. And you can't do that if you're in the meeting and you tell the executives, hey, could you just hold on a second? I just need to Google that. That's not the position you want to be in. And I'll often tell people, well, do you Google every time you hop into your car to drive to work? Why would you need to memorize how to drive a car? It's all on the internet. So there are reasons that we need to memorize this information. There are important reasons that we would want to be familiar with this, because you may be asked it and you don't have time to go to Google, to go to the internet and hope that you can find what you're looking for. IT doesn't work that way. You need to know some of these fundamental core pieces of information right off the top of your head. Or at least be able to say, okay, I think I know what we're talking about. Here's RAID 1, here's RAID 5, here's RAID 0. We can talk about one of those two. Would RAID 10 be better for using 4 drives, since you could lose one from each set of mirrors? In fact, you could, depending on the RAID 10 setup, you could actually lose multiple drives with RAID 10. Using 4 drives doesn't help you a lot. I've got RAID 10 right here, for example. Let's see if I can bring RAID 10 up. There's RAID 10. RAID 10 is really RAID 1 on these individual drives. So a mirror, there's another set of mirrors. There's another set of mirrors. And now I'm going to stripe between all the mirrors. See how I did that? Sort of embedded a mirror. This is sort of the problem with RAID 0, is that if you lose a drive, it breaks the entire array. But what if you could make RAID 0 so that if you lost a drive, you were still up and running? Voila, RAID 1 plus 0. So you've still got your striping that you're doing, but the stripe has a mirror. So your stripes are redundant stripes. Pretty useful to have that. That's whenever I start to see what would be the right answer. In fact, I could lose this drive, I could lose this drive, and I could lose this drive. I could lose 3 drives in this scenario and still be up and running. Lose no data. No one would even know that I was up and running. If you have 6 of these drives, you could lose 3 of them and you're still fine. Now, if you've lost 3 drives from your array, there's something else going on, brother. You need to figure out what's happening there, because something bad is going on. On the Core 2 exam, RAID is on the Core 2 exam. It's part of the troubleshooting section for RAID. There's probably more RAID on Core 1, but in the troubleshooting section for Core 2 is a section on RAID and redundancy for those. Absolutely. Let's go now to our phone lines. I want to pick up on phone line number 918 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Joshua Stewart, and I'm calling from Oklahoma.
Hey, Joshua. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
So, in preparing for my first help desk job, I actually recently passed the 8+ thanks to your videos. What would you say is the most important areas to focus on, and as I walk into a interview for a help desk job, and kind of the most important aspects to keep in mind for the interview process, and what I need to know for the actual job?
I think one of the best things that you can do from an interview process is to have conversations. I mean, the people that are there interviewing you want to know how well you're going to fit with the rest of the organization. A lot of what people hire is based on just the feel they get from talking with you. So it's great if you have at least something you can have conversations about. I like it when I go to an interview where we talk about nothing relating to the job for the first 5 minutes. Those are always the most fun. Like that was a thing that just happened, or I noticed that you have a picture of a thing here on your desk. What is that? What are you doing there? Is it next to a car? Is that a golf thing? Are you flying through the air somehow? What is going on there? Tell me a story. Another thing I think is useful, probably even more so, because you're going to get into the conversation about what you know technically. And I often tell people you need to have some stories. I mentioned this in the video that I made, how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about the need to have these stories. The people that are there interviewing are there to listen to you. They should not be doing all of the talking. And you need to answer in things that are more than yes and no answers. So you need to be able to have a story. Well, how am I going to create a story if I've never worked in this job before? Well, I'm glad you asked, because there are some things you can do in your own home lab to have an experience that in some way matches some of the technologies that these companies might be using. I give two examples in my video. One is I tell people to go out and download an evaluation version of Microsoft Server. Doesn't really matter which one, but load up Microsoft Server in a virtual machine and set up Active Directory. Add some fake users, maybe put your family in there as Active Directory users. Don't actually connect your family to this Active Directory. This is in a lab. Make up some fake users, maybe even build out a separate VM running Windows that you can connect to Active Directory. Log in with Active Directory, make up settings so you're changing the policies, the security policies for that particular user or workstation. It's a lot of fun, and probably the best part about it is you're going to really mess up the install. You're going to have problems during the installation process. I guarantee you're running into DNS problems with that. So you need to document, or at least remember, what these problems were that you had during the installation process, and be able to explain to the people interviewing you, oh yeah, I set up Active Directory at home. I put all these people in to Active Directory. First problem I ran into is DNS. And we will all nod our head and go, yep, you sure did. Well, tell us what you did to resolve that issue. Well, here's what we did. Here's how I knew it was DNS. Here's the troubleshooting I did. Here's what I finally found that helped guide me in the right direction. Here's what I changed on my Windows server. And now it started talking to my external DNS, and now everything was working properly. Users could find the DNS. The DNS was able to communicate with other external DNS servers, and everything started working the way you would expect. That's a great story, because it goes through first your knowledge of something they're going to need you to know about, which will be Microsoft's Active Directory. It will talk about being able to troubleshoot a problem and the process you went through to troubleshoot it. Now, in that video, I think it's even in the video description on YouTube right now, how to get a job in IT with no experience, where I also talk about other projects you can do. One of them is to set up a firewall and IPS, plug that into your actual internet link, and see what you see. Probably more stories are going to come from that one, because there is so much you're able to see when connecting to a live internet link using some of the firewalls, intrusion prevention, and logs that you could go through. It's remarkable what's running around out there on the internet. This is the reason we have these firewalls in our homes. This is why the first thing you plug into when it comes into your house or your business is a firewall, because there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet and you want to stop it before it's able to get inside of your network. So those are just two separate projects you could think about. There's lots of other projects you can do. Load up Office 365, which is on the cloud. You can probably install many implementations of that for very little cost, if not no cost. Set up a web server in Amazon Web Services. There is a free tier in AWS that allows you to do that. So you can tell people about setting up cloud-based services. You could tell them about setting up Windows Server with Active Directory. You could have conversations about firewalls and so many other things, but make sure you have a story. Make sure that at the end of this call or end of this meeting that you have with someone, that there are 2 or 3 things where you step through scenarios that dealt with technology, where you had to solve a particular problem. And it's interesting where these conversations tend to go, because somebody will say, well, if you did that, have you ever tried to do this? And you say, no, I haven't, but now I'm going to go back to my lab and I'm going to plug that in and try it out. Or they'll have other things that might be a good recommendation. And if you're applying to a help desk, it's always good to have some knowledge of the technologies they have in their environment. Now, there's other things you need to bring to the table. In that video, I talk about certifications, I talk about formal education, and I talk about knowing somebody that already works there. But all of those things work together. You have to put together a strategy when you're trying to get a job. You just can't expect to walk in the door and you've got it. You need to be better than anybody else who is there talking to that company. So make sure you use as many of those different elements as you can. And they're all documented. It's a very big video. It's a 30-minute video, but it's chock full of data. That might help you too, Joshua.
Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck.
Thank you.
This is whenever I go through the process of interviewing, it's almost a science unto itself, isn't it? It's almost this, I have to be prepared for every contingency scenario. So make sure if you are going in to take an interview, if you've never had an interview before, find somebody you know who maybe you like or even don't like and say, let's do a mock interview. Ask me some questions. I'm sitting here. I just came in for this help desk position. Ask me some questions and see what they think. There's also on the internet, on YouTube, there are some fantastic videos out there on IT and help desk interview questions. Some of them are very technically oriented, but some of them are not. Some of them ask questions like, why do you want this job? There's a good question. Well, because I need some money. Well, that's not the right answer. But these videos do help you understand what the right answer might be. So make sure you have a look at some of those as well. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 505 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Isaiah Rivera, and I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Hi, Isaiah.
And hi. I recently took my Core 1 exam, and thank you for your help. And how can I better grasp onto Linux, like Linux?
Yeah, because there's a lot of Linux commands on the Core 2 exam. There's just a lot there to be able to pour through. And I think one of the best things you could do is load it up in a VM or load it up in the cloud. There are a number of, I just mentioned, for example, Amazon Web Services has a free tier where you could install Linux on a web server or just a server unto itself. Doesn't even have to be a web server, just Linux on a server. And you can SSH into that device. You can connect to it through a browser front end or a remote desktop front end if it has a graphical front end, and use Linux that way. A lot of the commands that we have in the Core 2, you could connect to that device over SSH and run every single one of those commands. Very useful. Another thing you might want to consider doing is simply loading up a virtual machine on your existing desktop. So I have, for example, on my desktop, I'll pull it up here, I have a VM of a development or offline version of my web server. So before I push out changes to ProfessorMesser.com, I have a local version of ProfessorMesser.com, and I'm able to start up that particular web server on my machine and run it as if it is local on my device. So that's another thing you might want to consider doing. There are plenty of Linux versions that you can download that you can install on a fresh virtual machine. So download VirtualBox, which is free to run in Windows and Mac OS, and it runs great. It's a great virtualization software called VirtualBox. And VirtualBox is probably one of the most common ones to do. And then you can simply download Linux and install Linux onto this VirtualBox as if you were installing it on a live machine. So I think between those methods, you should be able to find one that works with the hardware that you have or the connections you have and be able to run Linux without worrying that you're going to break anything on your own system.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call, Isaiah. Best of luck. This is one, if you are needing to get access to an operating system, that's one way to do it. I'll also mention modern.ie. So if you've not visited modern.ie, as in the modern man, as in thoroughly modern Millie, modern.ie will redirect you to this Microsoft developer site, developer.microsoft.com/en-us/Microsoft-edge, which is why modern.ie works so much better. On modern.ie, there is a tools menu and a virtual machines option that brings up a list of VMs where you can download IE 8, 9, 10, or 11, because this is for Internet Explorer and Edge developers, but it is a full running version of Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. And it allows you to run them as long as you don't run them for production. You're only running them in a VM and you're running them for your lab. You could download Windows 10 using VirtualBox, Vagrant, VMware in Windows and Mac, Hyper-V in Windows, or Parallels in Mac, which is what I use. You choose the type of VM platform you're using. So if I told you to use VirtualBox, you would choose VirtualBox, and then you could download the file, and it gives you information on how to, right here, view installation instructions. Tells you exactly how to install that in your virtual environment. That is free. There is no Windows license required. You don't have to pay for anything. So you could load up Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10, which are the 3 operating systems you need on the Windows side for your Core 2, and run them for no money. You don't have to pay anybody. You don't need a license. You don't have to run illegally. You don't have to download from sketchy places. You just pull it right from Microsoft and have that there. Yeah. Or as people say, run it in a cloud. I can run Windows on AWS. I can load up Windows 10 and have it running in minutes through the AWS desktop, or run it on Azure. So there's plenty of options for running these. So the link, modern.ie, is the way to do it. Modern.ie. That'd be the best way to do it. I think that's one that if you are ever needing Windows, I think it's such a very useful way to do that. So modern.ie is probably the easiest way to do it. And I'll make sure, because Lori's watching the replay, make sure modern.ie is in the notes, in the YouTube video description notes. And we'll go from there. Back to the phones, the 240 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Oliver. I'm calling from the Maryland area.
Maryland. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
So I got my A+ back in June, and I actually start my first help desk job 2 weeks from now.
Nice.
And I just like to know your take on the traditional ladder on going higher in the IT field. So I'm thinking about being a cloud engineer or a cybersecurity engineer.
Great.
So since these roles are relatively advanced, I need to work on my, I need to work my way up, basically. So what would you say the roles that I should go for right after like a tier 1 help desk? For example, would I go to tier 2, then sysadmin, network admin, then network engineer, and then to a junior cloud administrator? Just like examples like that, like how would you depict that picture?
That is a perfectly reasonable path. One of the things that I've mentioned before on these study groups is that there's not a rail that you go on with IT that gets you from point A to point B. If you were going to be a lawyer, there's a specific path you would follow in college. You take the bar exam, and then there's certain things you do to move into perhaps a legal practice. Or if you want to be a doctor, there's a specific set program you go in college. There are things you do afterwards to earn your boards. You get time in clinicals. There's all these things that you have to do to follow that path. IT, though, is very big, and there is no path. There's no direct rail. There's obviously a path, but it's usually a path that you make. And I think some of the paths you just mentioned are very reasonable to be able to do this. The way that most people will get into IT initially is in a help desk position. And it's really a place where first they're putting you into a position where you can't really do much harm. You can't break a lot of things in a help desk. So that's good. It's perfect to bring someone in with no experience and put them in a position where they can't break very much. So that's, of course, I'm thankful for those positions when I was in the help desk. Secondly, you then can think about where you want to go from there. And part of the problem is, without being in IT now, it's difficult to know where you want to go. This is the challenge, is that, do I want to go into networking? Do I want to go into Linux operating systems? Do I want to go into the cloud? Maybe I have some idea of things that might interest me, but until you get into the middle of it, you really don't know where to go next. There's also the concern that you want to go to the next step up needs to be something that is available. That may be that cloud is taken off in your company and they need a lot more cloud people. So let's go work with the cloud team. When I was in the corporate help desk environment, which was really my third IT position, I guess, I worked in supercomputer operations. I worked as a field service technician, and then finally got a job working in a corporate help desk. So help desk for me was my third IT type job, my third technology job. So I was trying to learn as much as possible. And at that time, a new version of the Windows operating system was being rolled out, and they needed someone who was very knowledgeable in that operating system to be able to deploy and support that operating system on all their computers. So they said, would you like to go to this training? We're going to fly you out to wherever this was. I don't even remember where I went. It might even been Microsoft. We're going to fly out to California, to Texas, wherever, Atlanta, wherever I went. And we're going to get you trained for a week. And then you're going to come back and implement this. Great. Let's do this. So that was kind of their test. Is he ready to leave the help desk? And at that point, I was effectively moved into a desktop management or desktop support role where I was really tier 2, tier 3 for desktop. And I implemented the operating system. I created the automation for deploying the images. I managed the support process, the training, everything associated with that. So for me, it was maybe I really wanted to do more with the network. Maybe I really wanted to do more with a particular operating system. Maybe at that point, I wanted to go into network operating systems. At the time, it was Novell NetWare and Microsoft LAN Manager. That's what I really was interested in, but they had an opportunity for me, and it was technology I had not worked with yet. That's where I really became very familiar with Windows and the underpinnings of the Windows operating system. So looking back, although it probably in my mind wasn't where I would be going next, the fact that that was where I went next set me up very nicely to move into the networking side of networking all of these desktops together and understanding the protocols that were going across the network. And then in fact, that was my next position, which was really the position after that. So I went from workstation to server and then to network. So it got me to eventually where I wanted to be. And that gave me the ability, once I got to the network side, to jump into cybersecurity, which ultimately was that was sort of the peak or the pinnacle of my systems engineering, was in the cybersecurity side of things. So I think that's where you should think about really two things. You should think about when you get there, trying to learn as much as you can about everything. You should be a sponge, but you will notice there will be certain technologies that really interest you. And if cloud is one that's top of your mind, start talking to the cloud folks. In your organization, start talking to the cloud team. You're going to be talking with them anyway to send tickets over, to talk about problems that are occurring, to talk to the people on site and ask them, are there some projects going on that I can help with? Kind of off hours, are the things you're doing that I can just look over your shoulder and see what's going on? I want to learn more about the cloud piece. In any type of corporate environment, anytime you're taking the initiative and trying to learn more from the people that are there, they take notice of that. And whenever a new position comes up, they're going to come to you first and say, you've already been doing some of this. Would you be interested in this position? So I think for you, find the things that are most interesting, pursue those interesting things, learn as much as you can about those interesting things. And it's interesting in IT, these opportunities seem to change and happen all the time. You have to be ready to move in an instant. So learning as much as you can about as many things as you can will really position you well for what you want to do next in your career. Hopefully it's at least giving you some ideas. The world really is your oyster. Just decide what you want to focus on, go after that thing, and there's tons of jobs either within your organization or elsewhere where you'll be able to move into that particular kind of position.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your advice. And one more question. I remember in previous study groups you mentioned perhaps teaching new certifications. Do you know or have an idea when that might be, or like what certifications it might be on?
I never say for sure. I never make a solid decision on what I'm going to be working on until I really start working on it, because I tend to change my mind every day. There is a handful of certifications I would love to get to. A lot of this, as I mentioned earlier in the live stream today, is based on physics. There is Network Plus is being updated right now. We're almost done with that project, which is great. A Plus will be updated beginning of next year timeframe. So months from now, there will be another two training programs have to be updated, the Core 1 and the Core 2. So both of those have to be updated. So into 2022, there will finally be an opportunity, because Security Plus will have been updated, Network Plus will have been updated, A Plus will have been updated. Now what am I going to do? So I'm planning now for what am I going to do in that next set of availability that I'm going to have. And I do in my mind have a handful of certifications I plan to focus on, but I still haven't made a decision. Is it going to be Linux? Is it going to be a Microsoft certification? Is it going to be a Cisco certification? Is it going to be some other cloud-based certification? Now, I've got the foundational knowledge and industry experience to kind of focus on any one of those areas. What do I really want to focus on? And my decision changes every day. I wake up one morning and say, we're going to do Microsoft. And then I wake up the next day and say, you know what? No, we're going to do Cisco. And then I wake up the next day, you know what? Linux is sounding more interesting to me. So I never know. I'd love to be able to say that I absolutely know when this is going to happen, what it's going to be. But the reality is that the world, in my world anyway, is much more chaotic. And until I finally sit down and start working on it, I just don't know. And only then will I be able to say for sure. And we lost him. With that, he has had it. He's had it of me hemming and hawing over. I appreciate your call, though. I think that's really the challenge that we have, is trying to figure out for these. CompTIA certifications, once you earn your certification, it is good for 3 years. So if you were to, for example, you're working on your Network Plus, and we know that the current Network Plus is one that it will retire in June of 2022. But June the 1st of 2022, you took your Network Plus, you passed it. Even though the certification retires, you're still certified for 3 years, because it doesn't matter what they do with the exam. It doesn't matter what version of questions they put together. They could change the questions every day. What if there was a new certification version every day? Well, for those of you already certified, it doesn't matter. Now, unfortunately, they don't change it every day. They change it every 3 to 3.5 years. So that's the good part, is we don't have to worry about too much of that. But you do run into scenarios where that's a little bit of a challenge, is knowing when to take your cert and make sure you do the right thing. But the reality is, once you pass your certification, good for 3 years. Doesn't matter what's there. D in the chat room with a 35 GTQ super chat. Thank you so much. D says, Professor Messer, greetings from Guatemala. Thanks for all the effort. Been following since the 800 series, back when I didn't have any facial hair and had the no glasses and the big headphones on the 800 series videos. Thanks for watching for so long, and I'll try to keep up the great work. I think we've learned a lot since the 800 series. We had in the 800 series, if I think back, the first series I did with the 600 series, that was in 360p, and then I moved to HD. I think maybe it was the 800 or 900 series, we finally got into 1080p, and then finally in the being able to have the 4K in this latest version, I think is nice. So that's why you will often see, when I create a new certification series, that there is always some overlap. And you'll notice I'll just do the videos again for the overlap. And you're wondering, why did he do the video of the same thing again? Because we moved from 1080 to 4K, and I wanted everything in 4K. So I just think it looks nice. So sometimes we do that. So that's useful anyway, to have all of those options. But I like to redo. I know there's some content providers that will simply interlace the new stuff with the old, but I don't think it ever works quite as seamlessly as I would like it to. I would like the entire course to be cohesive, to be complete, not to have certain things that are no longer tested on that should not be there. So, and I like 4K. It's kind of nice to have that too. So that's where I go with those options anyway. Back to the phone lines. We do not have an area code. It's the anonymous area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Professor Musser.
Yes, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Okay. My name is Muhammad Farouk. I am calling from Saudi Arabia.
Well, thank you for calling.
Okay, first and foremost, I would like to say thank you so much for your service, and you are an inspiration to me. I really appreciate so much your knowledge and the fact you are willing to share this knowledge, especially for free.
You're quite welcome.
Thousands of IT students, their career secure in your hand. So I heard you passed my core on the last week, so I really thank you so much. I wouldn't be able to done without you.
So glad it helped. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. So I scheduled my core 2 on the beginning of November. So I had big trouble on the core 1 to understand the question. So what would you recommend for those English is their second language? So best way to understand the questions or their wording of the competitive, because if they would ask the question directly, what is the minimum requirement of Windows 10, like that, I could able to answer. But
right.
Instead of that, they are asking like a scenario based, like you went to Professor Messer Studios, then he asked like they are changing our mind like 2 and 3 different areas. So what would you recommend for me, like the understand the question easily? I can give the answer, but the problem is the understand the question.
Yep.
So please
I agree.
tell me I couldn't.
I could not agree more. The questions on the CompTIA exams are not simple, straightforward questions. They don't ask questions like, what is the port number used by HTTP? You'll never get a question like that. But those are so much easier to read, especially when English is not your first language. If English is your second language, these questions can be challenging to parse, just to read through. It's almost a reading comprehension issue. And you're absolutely right. It adds complexity to the exam itself. Now, if you are taking the exam in English and English is not your first language, there is something you might want to look at. In the candidate testing policies for CompTIA, they are able to provide accommodations during the exam for English as a second language. It's a 30-minute time extension. I almost wish I didn't speak English as my first language because I could use that 30 minutes. But if you are in a non-English speaking country and a localized version of the exam is not available, then you could possibly get an extension. I have heard of people in the United States also getting this extension as well. So make sure you check in and qualify that what is available to you. There is a link on the Pearson VUE website to deal with these types of accommodations. I found this on the CompTIA website under candidate testing policies. Look for that in the Google and see if you can find out where this might be, because there's a number of people I've recently seen on the CompTIA subreddit who have used this particular accommodation, and it really worked out very well for them because 30 minutes is quite a long time. And I'm with Kimberly in the chat room who said English is my only language, and I still had questions where I didn't understand what it was asking. And you're absolutely right. This can be quite a challenge to be able to even get through this in English when you know English. I can only imagine how it would be if English was not your first language. So that's what I would recommend for you, is have a look at that candidate accommodation and see if you can get that English as a second language or ESL accommodation for the exam. And maybe that will help you.
Okay. Though I mean, my question is like especially like if I would take more quizzes or like a practice exam or like do you think like if I spend more time on like question, so I could able to understand the question? Like, what do you think?
Absolutely. And I think this applies also if English is your first language. If you can find a set of questions that is written with the same style, the same cadence, the same voice as the actual exam questions, it gets you accustomed to what you might expect during the exam. Now, in my practice exams, for example, that was a pretty important thing for me. I wanted to create a set of questions that were original questions. I wrote every single one of these questions from scratch, but I wanted the questions to feel and have the same structure as an actual exam question. So I know I can recommend my practice exams to be able to do that because I wrote them that way. If you're looking at some other practice exams, ask the author of those practice exams if they have the same style as the actual exam questions. And I think using these types of exam questions, these practice questions, do get you in the same mode of understanding the style of what will be asked on the actual exam. That can only help you. And the more practice exams you do, the better off you're going to be.
So what do you think? How can I? Do you have any facility to deliver your practice exam book to Middle East country so I could able to purchase that? I don't like to read the digital version. Rather than I would like to get the physical version. So do you? I'm ready. I'm willing to spend the money. I don't care about that, but I need the notes is important for me.
Sure. In fact, that's something a lot of people do is they like to have the physical book available. It's a better study environment for them. So I do ship worldwide, though. Shipping internationally, though, is a bit costly. So there are some costs associated with it, but I'll ship these books anywhere in the world. When you check out, you'll get the option for shipping, and you'll see what that cost will be associated with it if you purchase the physical edition. And then, as I mentioned, you also get the digital edition as well. So even while you're waiting on this to be delivered, because right now international shipping is a difficult haphazard type scenario with everything going on with the virus and dealing with the manpower and just having people to process the mail is a challenge, but it will eventually get to you, and I will ship anywhere in the world. So all you have to do is put your address and country and information in, and we'll ship it out.
Okay. Lastly, there is any updation to like a Middle East can purchase your voucher? So like there is you have it to, and do you have any plan about that? Like Asians and Middle East people, those students can purchase voucher from your website?
Do I say that again? Do I have plans for
exam vouchers?
Sorry, I didn't catch you on that last part.
Yeah, I mean exam vouchers.
Vouchers for other countries.
People, there isn't any option.
Well, right now the only options available for vouchers on my site are for really North America, which would be U.S. and Canada and some U.S. territories. Right now, I don't have any options available for vouchers for other countries. We've been talking about providing that and having options available for that. We just don't currently offer it on the website. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you so much for all of your answers, and definitely I will pray for you and all of your things. So there is only that thing I can do for you, just to pray for you. And okay, thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, and best of luck with your exams.
Okay.
That I think is a challenge. It's interesting. I had the same experience on my Security Plus exam where I'm reading through these questions and wondering, what are they doing to me? This was on the 501. The 501 exam was notorious for their questions. They were long, involved, overly written questions that did more. They were a reading comprehension test more than it was a security test at times. Fortunately, on the 601, which is the current version of the Security Plus, so much better. So much better. The questions are much smaller, much more concise. They're still challenging, but they're only 2 or 3 sentences long rather than 5 or 6 sentences long, which makes a huge difference when you're in the middle of a timed exam, for sure. In the chat room, Vincent, thank you for the $5 super chat. Vincent says, thank you so much for all the content. Working at my help desk job from home. Awesome. Thanks to your courses. My life has changed for the better. So glad to hear that. It's just the beginning of an amazing experience you're going to have in IT. The sky's the limit. Find out what you want to do and just keep doing that. It's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to create these training courses, because I got into IT and it changed my life. It allowed me to go places and see things I had never thought I would be able to do. It gave me an opportunity to do things professionally I thought I would never do, and also gave me the income to do things personally that I thought I would never be able to do. So I would love for everybody to experience that. And it's getting that first job in the help desk is the first step in doing that. As I mentioned, that was my 3rd job. I only got to help desk the third job. So the fact that you're in help desk now, you're even ahead of the curve as far as my personal experiences. So congratulations with that. Best of luck, Vincent. Also, Neil in the chat room, the £2 donation. Thank you so much for that as well. The things that we do with the A+, the Network Plus, Security Plus, and whatever we want to do next are really about your support being able to do that. So I cannot thank you enough for the super chats. Also, if you don't have the money or you don't have a way to be able to contribute financially, hit the like button. That's a great way to contribute to this. The folks that I associate with, I have my own account person at YouTube, thanks to you. She sends me information and keeps track of what's going on with my channel and gives me tips and ideas and things that I could do to make the experience better for you. And I get to give her feedback to hopefully improve the things that you see as well. And these super chats help with that too. So thank you so much for all of those. KevTech says, a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. KevTech IT support with his own great channel on YouTube. Check him out. With a $5 super chat. Always recommended everyone to your content. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Super helpful as always, KevTech says. So there's another good one to stick into your YouTube subscription list to be able to have that there as well. Ian in the chat room says, what's the best order? A+, Security Plus, Network Plus, or A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, or what would it be? This is one, by the way, that I did opposite of what most people might think. The correct order is the one that helps you in your career the way, or helps you personally the way you would need to be helped. So, for example, between those 3, the first one I took and passed was Security Plus, because I was working at Network Associates as a systems engineer. I had already had tons of networking certifications, but we got purchased by McAfee, and McAfee changed their name to Network Associates. And now I had to know about enterprise antivirus and support of the antivirus. I had to know about help desk, because at the time, Network Associates had 2 help desk products. I had to know about network management, network analysis, because that's where I came from. That's what they bought. And then there was a security piece that was being added on to that. So I had a very broad set of things I needed to know, but a lot of it focused on security. Network Associates had one of the very first firewalls in the industry, proxy-based firewall called Gauntlet, for those of you that go back in the day, had purchased an IPS company. So IPS was also a part of this. So I needed a legitimate security certification. So I already was past A+. That didn't help me with my career. Network Plus, I already had tons of network certifications from working as a network management and protocol analysis systems engineer. So I needed a security certification. Security Plus was the first one I got. So that's the decision I made. Then I already had that and thought, I should do some videos on these. That's where the spark of this kind of started. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do a video on Network Plus or A+, I need to go get those certifications. I knew a lot about networking already. I already passed my CNX certifications. Let's go take Network Plus. I took Network Plus second in this list. And then finally, once I'd finished Security Plus and Network Plus, I finally went and got my A+. So I did it backwards, I guess, to what the traditional way is. But career-wise, that was the right path for me. So when people ask which is the path I should take, what should I do first? I don't know. You tell me. What are you trying to do? Because that's really what should position you or direct you to what you need to do next is what are your personal goals and objectives? What do you want to do with this cert? We don't get certifications because we just want it. I guess we could. Some people might. Very few. Most of us are earning a certification because we're doing something with it. We're using it as a credential. We're using it as currency, if you will, in what we want to do next. We're adding it to our big pile of technical currency. And whenever we go to an interview, we show somebody our wallet. And we say, well, I got this currency and this currency and this currency. So that they know, okay, there's some legitimacy associated with that. Let's drill down further and see just how legitimate it is. So that's where we go from in there. Let's do another call, the 240 area code. Hi, caller. What is your name and where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello, caller.
How are you doing today?
I am. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Yes, my name is Desiree Desofo.
Thanks. Thank you so much for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I'm one of your fans. I always follow everything that you have.
Thank you so much.
I have today, I'm calling from Maryland.
Did you say calling from Midland? You're talking from Texas?
Maryland.
Maryland, a different place than Midland. Thank you so much for calling from Capitol Heights, Maryland. I see here. So thanks for calling. What's your question?
Okay, so I have my A+ expiring on October 10. And I earned continuing education from you last time, but I couldn't find the email for that. And I was trying to see if what's the next step for me to upgrade or to upgrade my certification. I have to take the exam, the 1.0, because I got the 901, 902. So did I have to do the 1.0, the actual exam, or I can use the continuing education for that?
So you had started by saying that your certification will expire in October. So currently, your certification is active. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's great because for those of you that have been through this, once your certification expires, you take your certification, it's good for 3 years. After 3 years and a day, your certification is no longer valid. It is expired. And once it has expired, you can't renew it. So you would have to take the exams again to re-earn the certification if that's what you had. But that's not your situation. Your certification is still active. It expires in October. So now you've had this challenge. There's a lot of CEUs, continuing education units, that you would have to accumulate to be able to renew this. And there's not a lot of time. There's less than a month here, or a month or so, to make this happen. Because of that, I think something you definitely should look at is the CertMaster CE. That is the CertMaster Continuing Education Program, which is for A+, a little bit more expensive than doing CEUs. It's $129, but it is an online self-paced e-learning course, and it's all something that you can do from your mobile phone or from your browser. It takes about 8 to 10 hours, depending on your knowledge. It might take even less time than that. And once you're done, you're renewed. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to collect CEUs. You don't have to put a CEUs or take another class. You don't have to take a higher level certification. You don't have to take a third-party certification. You don't have to do any of that. You just take the CertMaster CE and you're certified. That's it. You're renewed for another 3 years just by taking that CertMaster CE. Now, if you already had your A+ and Network Plus and Security Plus, you could take the Security Plus CertMaster CE and it would renew everything underneath it, just like accumulating CEUs would do. You always renew your highest level cert, and everything underneath is automatically renewed. But for A+, $129, you buy it, you pass it, it's self-paced. Just make sure you finish it before the expiration date of your certification, and you are good to go. That's a really great way to do this. I did a video on all of the different ways to renew. It's called How to Renew Your Certification in Just a Few Hours. And I also think it's on the YouTube video description of this video. If not, Lori will remind me, or will put it on there herself so that it's available for people who are watching this later. But that's a great way to do it as well.
Wonderful. So thank you for your information. And I always recommend Professor Messer to everybody who want to learn IT as career. So I really like your knowledge, your information that you provide to us all the time. And I have to purchase how you do that? Purchase the same Master CE. And then I will purchase from your website after this conversation. I will purchase for my Security Plus exam. So I have to get a voucher from your website.
Well, I appreciate that.
So that you have discount for that.
I appreciate you telling me that, and I appreciate your support of the website too. It all helps to make all of this work for everybody else. So best of luck.
Yeah, you're the best. You're the best. Everybody said to listen that. So.
You're too kind. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the call.
Okay.
That made my day, quite honestly. So whenever somebody says you're the best, you can't help but like that, even if it might not be true. But we won't say that. We're just going to go with that. Even if I was the second best, I'll take somebody telling me I'm not, telling me I'm better than that. So that's when, if you look at certification options, recertification options, CertMaster CE is where I just point everybody these days. It's just so easy, and it's relatively inexpensive to do that. Mike in the chat room asks, I've heard after 6 years, you should probably do a full retest. What are your thoughts on this? Well, there's no reason you have to do a full retest as long as you continue to recertify your existing certification. So you could have taken a certification 4 versions ago and simply recertified through the years and maintained that CE version of your certification without having to pass the exam again. The idea to do the recertification, to go through something like CertMaster CE, to collect CEUs, to do all of the things you would need to do to renew your cert, are taking into account that there's probably some newer technologies that have come out. I mean, 15 years ago, we weren't talking about the cloud. Now that's all we talk about. So, of course, during that time frame, you would probably need to get some knowledge in cloud-based technologies. Now, you could take the exam all over again. That is a perfectly valid way to renew your certification, is to simply take the exam, the newest version of the exam again. Absolutely, you can do that. But you don't have to. And by renewing it with the CEUs or with CertMaster CE or one of these other methods, you're effectively learning the things that are different or have been updated through the years. So I think any one of those is a reasonable thing to do. You do not have to take your exam again after 6 years and do a full retest. If you feel like that's what you need to do, you should do that. That's a perfectly reasonable way to renew your cert. It's up to however you would like to do it. It's probably the hardest way to renew your cert is to take the exam all over again, especially if it's A+, because you have to take 2 exams all over again. There's much easier ways to do this, and I think CertMaster CE does a very good way of filling in the gaps for the things that you need to do. Is it true that getting Network Plus or Security Plus recertifies the A+? It absolutely does. So whenever you are renewing, there are a number of options available. You can renew by taking a higher level CompTIA certification. Higher level, they already have this on the CompTIA website. A+ is at the bottom. Network Plus renews A+. Security Plus renews Network Plus and A+. Linux Plus renews A+. Cloud Plus renews A+ and Linux Plus. The latest version renews A+, Network Plus, and Linux Plus. CISA and Pentest renew CISA and Pentest. Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus. And then CASP just renews everything. CISA Plus, Pen Test, Security Plus, Network Plus, and A Plus. So there is a tiered structure that they have in place, and you only need to renew the highest level certification that you happen to have, and it takes care of everything underneath it. If that makes any sense. So that's what you should focus on, is finding those things. If you had A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus, can you imagine having to go through each one of those and renew them individually? Thankfully, we don't have to do this. This is on the CompTIA website under the continuing education section, renewing with a single activity, and the single activity is earning a higher level CompTIA certification. So that's where you would find that. It's under the continuing education section, renewing with a single activity on the CompTIA website. So plenty of that there on the website to go through. Lots of things to focus on for certifications and renewables. And they do have these stackable badges. The stackables mean that if you had multiple certs, you can effectively combine them together to have a stackable badge. There's a number of digital badges available for these certifications. I wish I could find it is on, there it is on the website, the career pathways, for example. If you had, for example, your A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus, you are a CompTIA Secure Infrastructure Specialist, or CSIS. Now, has anybody heard of a CompTIA Secure Infrastructure Specialist before? Probably not. Not many of us have. I certainly don't remember that off the top of my head. And employers certainly have not. I think they introduced those as a way to maybe make it something, at least something interesting that you can work towards. And I think it's great that we have them, and you should absolutely put them on your resume, and they're a great talking point in front of employers. But people won't recognize them unless you explain them. So that's the only caveat, is putting them there doesn't help you. You should, if you put on your resume that you are a CompTIA Secure Infrastructure Specialist, make sure that you also independently put that you are A Plus certified, Network Plus certified, and Security Plus certified. Do not leave those off just because you put that you are a CSIS, because nobody will know what that means. And you'll sort of miss the whole opportunity of having the A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus. That's my recommendation anyway. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 443 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing? My name is Max.
Hi, Max. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hi. So this isn't strictly a plus question.
Sure.
Just got off of work and I saw the live stream. I actually just passed my Security Plus.
Nice. Congratulations.
And I'm subscribed to your channel. Thank you. I'm subscribed to your channel. I saw the live stream. I just want to come on, say thank you. You really helped me pass just with your 601 video course and everything. Definitely cleared up a bunch of subjects that I was a little unwary on. With the continuing education kind of segment that we're in, so I have my Security Plus, and I'm looking kind of in the next step. I was thinking possibly the CISA. I just wanted to get your opinion on what you think would be a good next step after Sec Plus.
Well, I guess this is one of those where it depends on what you're going to do. It depends on the path that you're planning to go down. It depends on what job you're in now. It's one of those where I can't answer that unless we turn the mirror around and figure out what is your next objective in your career. I always tell people that we go to these interviews and people ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? In IT, that's a lifetime. That's an enormous amount of time. I could have 5 jobs in 10 years. I have no idea where I will be 10 years from now. And the technologies that are available out here will be completely different in 10 years. There will certainly be new ones in 10 years that I can't possibly predict. So I always tell people, I want to know, or at least want to tell people or have in my mind, what do I want to do next? Forget about 5 years and 10 years. Those will work themselves out. Time will take care of that on its own. But what is the next thing I want to do? And so you should have in your mind one or two options for what you want to do next. So in your case, you take in Security Plus. There's probably some idea of security you want to work towards. But what was your reason for taking Security Plus? And what do you think your next step, you would want your next step to be?
Okay. Yeah. So currently I'm doing like a entry level networking.
Great.
I'm not sure if it's exactly what I want to keep doing. I'm thinking getting more into either DBA sort of work or something more security, kind of like CISO related work, security related work.
Well, either one of those, it has many, many options available underneath that category. So on the database side, plenty of things you could be doing with databases right now. It's interestingly enough an exciting place to be because big data and data analysis right now is enormous. Being able to manage large amounts of data, being able to put together systems that can access large amounts of data, and then being able to have the knowledge of how to access that large amount of data is in very high demand right now. So data, databases, and everything data related is certainly a hot section of IT. The other thing you've decided on, security, another huge hot area of IT, just because it always has been and it's going to continue to be. But the technologies that we have on the security side are also incredibly exciting and important. With both of those, whether this is something you should probably balance out with what you've been doing on the networking side, both of those need a certain level and knowledge of networking. On the data side, you don't need quite the extensive knowledge of networks, but if you are getting into big data, being able to design, implement, and troubleshoot high-speed networks is going to be incredibly important, and that might be something to consider when you're working on switching and routing right now. The other side of things on security is heavily focused on networking. You effectively have to be a network expert to be able to work at the higher levels of IT security, because a lot of the things you're doing are networking problems that have a security layer on top of it. Take, for example, implementing a next generation firewall. The firewall itself is probably going to be configured as a layer 3 device. And so it's going to be routing. If it's going to be touching the internet when it's routing, then it's going to be probably using some type of dynamic routing protocol, or you're going to need to set up static routing inside of that firewall to be able to communicate properly. It'll be doing network address translation, certainly a networking aspect, something we need to configure. And there's all the networking interfaces, IP addresses, subnet masks, gateways, DNS configurations, and everything else associated with the networking side. If you are working in security on that firewall, there's probably going to be IPsec tunnels. Those tunnels are going to be IP relating tunnels from one site to the other, usually across the internet. So there is another one where you have to be able to understand the network side of things to be able to communicate properly across that IPsec tunnel. And you've got a challenge with other security technologies, cloud-based malware detection, understanding how to protect and stop traffic, malicious traffic through the firewall. These are all networking problems taken from the perspective of somebody who needs to secure data. So that's why I tell people, if you're planning to get into IT security, learn as much as you can about the network. Now, if you're in networking now and you're thinking, this is not my favorite thing, then maybe getting into data, getting into Linux, getting into cloud, getting into some other part of IT might be a better fit for you. Find the thing that is most exciting for you. Drive towards that thing, learn as much as you can about it. And in some cases, if you can find a niche in that area that nobody else in your organization is touching, and you need to learn as much as you can about what they don't know. And you will become a very valuable person based on the things that no one else knows about. So sometimes it's about identifying gaps and diving into those gaps and learning everything you can about what nobody else knows that makes you more of a valuable technologist. So it's never one thing. It's everybody has a different path. You just have to figure out the path that makes the best sense for you.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. That was definitely very helpful information. I'll have to think about what I'm really passionate about and excites me the most, and I'll have to move on from there and make a path, like you said. Definitely a lot of good tips in there. Yeah.
That's the best way to do it, Max. I appreciate the call. Best of luck.
All right. Yep. Thank you so much for all your help with me passing.
Glad to hear it. Congratulations again.
All right. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too. That I think is the biggest challenge we have, is figuring out what we want to do. Sometimes it is about passion. Sometimes it is about what interests us, and we can follow that interest and that passion towards what we want to do. But it's also a balancing act. You know, as you get into technology, maybe your first technology job. When I got my first technology job, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. So you go through life, and then you get married, or have a partner, or you want to live somewhere else, or you make a decision about what your life wants to be. And those decisions will affect what you do as your career. They may affect where you live. They may affect where you can go, and they may limit the decisions you could make for a career. I eventually got married, had 3 kids. Well, you can't really pick up from a town and go somewhere else easily once they're now all in school. They've got friends, they've got activities. It becomes very difficult to move somewhere else. And if you do move somewhere else, you have to make a lot of allowances for that. You know, there's extra things that get tacked onto this. So you have to think about all those things. I also have to think about what people are willing to pay. I may not go after the job that is my passion when there's another job over here that I'm equally interested in that pays a little more. Okay, there's a balancing act. We have to make a decision. I've also met with people and talked to people in IT who have a job, and I talked to them. One particular person I talked with who was really good at his job. He was very, very knowledgeable. You ever meet those technical people and they just know it? They got it going on. They were sharp. They knew the answers. They knew how to make things happen. They could solve problems. They were very good. And I said to him, you know, you're working in a relatively lower paying position than what you could be working in. He was still in a very good position. It wasn't like he was having to deal with not making lots of money. He was in IT. He was doing quite well. But I said, there's some room for you to move and even make some more. And he said, well, that's not my thing. My thing is I have things happening at home where I need flexibility in my time, and I need flexibility in what I am able to do in different hours of the day. And this job gives me the flexibility. And it made me take a step back and go, oh yeah, that's right. We're not all driven by money. We're also driven by things that aren't financial. And for him, having that flexibility in his schedule was so important, more important than the paycheck he was getting. And I think that was the right perspective, probably the right perspective we should all think about when we're trying to figure out what the best balancing act will be for our career. It's never any one thing. If we were all about the money, there's things you could do to move up the ladder quickly and make as much money as possible. But not everybody has that. We all make decisions, balancing acts in our decisions of what we are doing from a career perspective. And for him, the balancing act was about what was happening at home and balancing that with what was happening in his career. And he'd found the right balance, which was just phenomenal. Just great. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's go to 773. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Professor. My name is Joe Darvish. I've talked to you before.
Yes, you have. Thanks for calling in. What can we do for you?
First of all, sir, you're an inspiring professor, which is really a pleasure talking to you. And you. Number 2 question I have is, if you have a network or a company that you want to try new software, you want to see if it's in compliance with your policies, how would you do that? Would you recommend VMware, how would you test a new software so it doesn't create any problem for you? And I hang up, and I really appreciate your answer. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate the call. Well, I'll tell you how I have done it in my career in different places and how I do it now, because I still have the same challenges, just in a kind of a smaller perspective. There is, in almost every large organization, you've got some type of lab where you can test these applications. Usually the applications, if you're writing them in-house, there's a separate development side of things where the developers can do whatever they want on their own servers and they're good. But eventually the developers will do their work. They come out of their side with media or with files that are on a server, and they say, here is the version that should go into production. Great. So that version is probably an upgrade to something that's existing, or it's something new that we're putting in. And when we get into that, the particular challenge is that how can I put this into production knowing that it's not going to break something, knowing that's not going to corrupt any of the data that's already there or delete any of our data? How can we be sure this is going to work properly? Well, you need a lab. You need some type of test environment to be able to do this. And I think in most test labs, in most staging systems, we call it staging equipment, to do that, most of the time these days we're using virtual machines. We're using a virtual environment to make that happen. On my website, if you go to ProfessorMesser.com, you're really hitting a number of servers, a number of reverse proxies, load balancers, and then multiple servers on the inside that finally make this work. It's a relatively complex and probably overly complex implementation. I need to simplify it in some ways, but right now it works fantastic. It's got very good response time, and I like it a lot. So there are times, of course, when I need to upgrade operating system software. I need to upgrade the web server software. I need to upgrade the content management software or the plugins for that management software. I have to make changes. Well, my website's very important to me. I don't want to lose data. I don't want to have the system break. I don't want it to go down. So how do I test before deploying all these changes? I have a VM right here on my local machine. I run this VM on this computer right here. I connect to it from a separate device like this laptop, or even actually I load up 2 separate VMs and I connect to it from those VMs, and I update the software. I update the plugin. I update the content management. I update the operating system. I do those updates, and after every update, I run a series of tests to make sure that what I updated didn't break something else. So once I feel secure that the updates that I need to make are working in my test environment, I can then go to production. I have a backup process in production where I back up my site. I back up the databases so that if I mess the whole thing up, I can get back to where I was before I started this process. So once I back up everything, I perform those upgrades, usually a little bit at a time. We'll do a couple here, then we'll wait a day. We'll do another couple, we'll wait a day. We'll do another couple, we'll wait a day, just to make sure. Because sometimes the development environment and the production environment are slightly different, and I can't test everything. So that's what I do, is run it at the VM, make sure it works properly in the VM, gives me a comfort level, makes me happier with what I'm planning. Then I finally push it into production where I have my own rollback in the production side as well. So backups are so important. A process is important. Knowing how to recover from problems is important. And I have an extreme amount of documentation. Literally, I have documented step by step by step how to do the backups, how to do the updates, so that I've done it so many times. I've memorized the process, but having it in a checklist allows me to not miss anything. Have I backed up the database? Yep. Have I backed up the files? Yep. Have I made this change? I have. And I can just go through that list. But also what's nice about that is every time I do an update, it's exactly the same process every time. Documentation is so important. And if you're able to have this documentation in your environment and follow it every time, then I don't have to worry about it. I've already tested it. I know that it works. and we'll just follow this process every time. It's all about having the backups, having the virtual machines, doing all of that. I think it becomes pretty important to have those too. When should you normally back up drivers? Well, maybe when you're planning to update the drivers would be a good time to back them up. Drivers don't change very often. When they do change, I noticed that Windows 10, certainly if we're talking Windows, does a lot of driver updates now directly from Microsoft, which I guess is okay. There have been times when the video driver that is in my Windows 10 system was set to automatically update itself. Worst thing you can do is have drivers update themselves automatically because they updated themselves and it broke the streaming software. Like that's just a no-brainer. Of course it's going to break something when it automatically updates. So the only thing that updates in my Windows is the core operating system, and I don't update drivers automatically. And I almost try to never update anything automatically, which is almost impossible with Windows and almost encouraged with Windows. Windows has these updates that are relatively important when they get pushed out. So I do want to have my Windows systems as secure as possible. And generally, Windows updates don't break very much. But boy, driver updates, they can break a lot. So you would back up those drivers. Now would be a good time. Just put them away. So you know at least on September 15th, the drivers, we have the backup of the current drivers, that type of thing. I think that's an important piece too. Do we need A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus to look for a job in a database? Well, maybe. Do the people hiring for the database positions want you to have an A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus? They might want you to have a Oracle certification. They might want you to have a MySQL certification. They might want you to have an AWS certification because all the databases may be in the cloud. They may want you to have an Azure certification with Microsoft SQL Server. So the real question is, what do the employers want? That's what you should get. You should always be asking yourself, what are they looking for? You almost want to create it. I mentioned this in my How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience video. Make a spreadsheet of all of the jobs in your area that you're qualified for. Find out what they're asking for. What type of formal education do they want? What type of certifications do they want? And then what other knowledge are they looking for? Maybe you'll see some things that are similar across all of those jobs. Maybe you'll see some things that are different that you didn't think of. That's a great way to do some recon. In fact, it's a great thing to talk about in the interview. I talked about stories. That's a great story in itself. You know, I looked at all of the jobs for help desk in this area, and everyone was asking for the A+ certification. I was very glad that I could put that on my resume when I applied for this position. It's always nice to tell people in the interview that you have the certifications or requirements that they were looking for. They don't always read your resume. I know that's surprising. We spend so much time on our resume making it perfect. And I've been in so many interviews where I've handed my resume or they've already got my resume and they say, okay, so who are you and where are you from? Like, well, it's the very top of my resume. They've never seen it. They haven't read it. Where are you working now? That's the next thing on my resume that they did not read. And then after that, the second half of the front page and nothing on the second page was ever even seen. So all that list of things that I put down that said, I know about this, I know about this, I wrote a book on this, I knew this, they didn't even read it. They had no idea. So in the interview, I have to say, well, when I wrote my book on Nmap, this is they go, whoa, you wrote a book on Nmap? Yes. It's on page 2, right there at the bottom that you didn't read. That, yes, I did. So you have to tell them the things that you have done, that you have accomplished, so that they will know, because they've got other things going on at work. They don't have time to read through every resume. So absolutely make sure you do the legwork. They're very familiar with the market in your area. You're very familiar with what people are willing to pay in your area, and you're very familiar with what they're looking for so that you can tell them in the interview that you have the knowledge that they're looking for. Anytime you can repeat some of those things back to the people interviewing you can only be a good thing. It's going to stick with them. They'll know, okay, you actually did read through what we were looking for, and you actually do meet those requirements. You have to tell them that. Don't have them make that decision. Don't force them into going through the logical steps to get down there. You need to tell them. Well, I'm so glad I had an opportunity to come talk to you after reading your job description and seeing so many things that fit my previous experience and my knowledge. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to talk to you about this. That's all you even have to say. You don't even have to go through details. They're like, oh, you do? Oh, sure, right. Make them already be thinking, oh, yeah, of course you have those requirements. Of course you have that knowledge. Of course we should hire you for this position. Well, that brings us to the end of, went a little over time, but I don't think we did bad this time. Thanks for joining us on this month's study group. We did 2 study groups this week for A+. We're going to do the same thing next week. So next week on Tuesday, we have a Network Plus study group. Next week on Thursday, we have a Security Plus study group. Cramming them all in a very short period of time. So we'd love to have you come back and join us for those as well. I'll have some great Network Plus questions, although it will still be an N10007 Network Plus study group. Not making that jump yet, but maybe soon. And then, of course, the Security Plus has been updated recently. So we'll do a 601 study group on Thursday. We would love to have you come back and join us there as well. In the meantime, we'll be over on Discord. We'd love to have you join us there, ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. There's always somebody in there doing something 24/7. So we'd love to have you join us on that. And of course, keep checking back on the calendar. We never know what's going to happen with scheduling on the live streams. It is always up to date at ProfessorMesser.com/calendar. Thanks for joining us again. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everyone.